Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We are taking just a minute here as we are promoting our advisory group members. This is Deb Noodleman, part of the Kearns and West facilitation team. And Gilly, I'll let you tell me when you think we're close. And I would ask Janine and Edith, I'll give you both a minute. We'll watch as we get to capacity, and then would love to be able to start. Thank you both. I will add, as we have our advisory committee members joining us, we'd love if you can turn your video on. We know it's sometimes a lot to ask early in the morning. It gets us as close as possible to feeling like we're in a room together. We're so excited to have you with us and appreciate the willingness to turn screens on. How's it going, Gilly, with the promoting in? I feel like I've got about 10 maybe.
Yeah, it looks like we're about halfway there.
Okay.
And so members of our advisory group, you'll get a little window that pops up on your screen that asks you to accept being promoted to a panelist. If you could please hit accept, that will bring you into our meeting as a advisory group member.
Great. So there's a couple things also going on as you're coming in. Nicole and Gilly are checking your name, and they're helping a little bit if you need some modification. It's a way of, again, introducing each other, getting to know each other, to the advisory committee and to the public that's observing. As you're logging in, if you have any questions or technical problems, feel free to drop it into the chat, which is active. It is also visible to the public. It's our way to make sure we get you the audio and the clarity you need to participate. Thank you. So in just a minute, Gilly, I think we're going to start, and then we'll let you and Nicole keep doing this in the background, because our people that are currently in the audience that you're promoting up can still hear, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I think, are we close? Janine, what do you think? Should we go ahead and start I feel like we have such a huge agenda and so much to talk about in our time together. I may just go ahead and let us begin the meeting.
Sounds good. I'm ready if we are.
Okay. So handing it over to Janine Benner, Director, Oregon Department of Energy, for our welcome.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Janine Benner. I'm the Director of the Oregon Department of Energy, and it's exciting to see some familiar faces and some new faces on with us today. So next slide, please. Hopefully all of you are familiar with ODO, but just in case, the slide shows our mission and what we do. And I'm really thrilled and humbled that the legislature has entrusted us with the responsibility of putting together an energy strategy for the state, which is really central to our mission that you see here on this slide of advancing solutions to shape an equitable, clean energy transition. And I'm super excited this morning to be kicking off our public meetings for the Oregon Energy Strategy with you. So as you've probably been following along, in November of last year and June of this year, we held public webinars to present our early thinking on the energy strategy. And today we're launching the engagement process in earnest. So this is the start of kind of an intense summer of important meetings to inform the evaluation of pathways to achieve our state's energy policy objectives. And it's also the start of a year and a half of public meetings, technical analysis, policy evaluation, and drafting to deliver an Oregon energy strategy to the governor and the legislature by November 1st, 2025, which sounds like a long way away, but we know it's just around the corner. And the advisory group plays a key role in this process. Over the last several weeks, we've undertaken a selection process that focused on identifying representatives of diverse perspectives and lived experiences from across Oregon to advise us as we've developed this energy strategy. We were very pleased to receive 65 excellent expressions of interest. And from that pool, we had the really difficult job of narrowing it down, matching up lived and professional experience with the list of requirements that HB 3630 asks us to fulfill in developing the energy strategy. And the job wasn't easy. We had to decline many highly qualified, interested people who also brought important perspectives. But we're confident that this group of about 30 people from across Oregon brings many important and different perspectives to our room. We'll make the energy strategy stronger. So not everyone can make it to our first meeting this morning, but I'm pleased that the group has representation from public power, investor-owned utilities, developers, environmental advocacy, public interest, and environmental justice organizations. We have business and industry and academia. We truly appreciate the partnership from some tribal representatives that are going to help us inform the strategy. You all will play an essential role in informing the energy strategy. So thank you in advance for your time, your insights, and your candor. The advisory group is really our sounding board. It's the place where we will report on progress throughout the project, where we can ask the hard questions and where you can ask us the hard questions. And by meeting once a month, you will really help inform our thinking every step of the way. And we know that's a big commitment. We really appreciate your time and engagement. We look forward to working with you all and to learning from you how we can work together towards meeting our energy policy objectives. And for those who aren't on the advisory group, advisory committee, but who might be listening in, thank you as well. We really appreciate you being here and participating, and we hope that you will also share your insights and perspectives throughout the process. So in addition to being at these meetings, there are many ways to get involved. And on our website, you can see that information about working groups and public listening sessions, which are kicking off next week. And I think we'll be talking about some of those opportunities a little bit later in the meeting. So I'm going to be able to join you for the first part of this meeting, and then I'll have to hop off. But I really appreciate you all being here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. And I will now hand the floor over to my colleague, Edith Bayer.
Thanks, Janine, and good morning, everyone. My name is Edith Bayer. I am Energy Policy Team Lead here at the Oregon Department of Energy, and I'm leading our work on developing an Oregon energy strategy. I'm really excited to be here with you all today, and I just wanted to kick us off by talking about goals for our time together today. So first, I know that all of you have put a lot of thought into the Oregon energy strategy. You're all here. That said, we're all co-creating this process together, and we're actually at an early stage of the process. And I think it's important that we start off by establishing a common understanding of the project, of what is the Oregon energy strategy, how do we envision the project rolling out over time, what are the major milestones, what are we delivering. We don't all know each other. There are a lot of people in this virtual room, not counting Odo and our contractors, and let's take some time for introductions so we can get to know each other. And we also want to go through to review and discuss the charter, which really frames up how we're going to work together, what purpose, what the role of the advisory group is. And then we'd also like to talk a little bit about upcoming meetings so you can kind of see how that role is going to unfold over the next couple of months. So with that really high-level overview, I'd like to hand the floor back over to Deb to help walk us through today's agenda. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Edith. Happy to be here. So we have a big agenda for our 3 hours. And again, thrilled to be with all of you. We have posted this agenda on the website, and there's a fuller version that people can also see themselves. And we're in right now this 9 to 9:15 section, which is our welcome agenda review. And then we're going to quickly transition into an advisory group and Odo introduction section. I kind of call this the go slow to go fast. For as much time as we have today, we really want to head once around the virtual table and ask each advisory group member to just take a moment, introduce yourself, introduce your affiliation, the role that you're representing here at the advisory group, and then finally, just one hope or expectation that you have for the process. What's a wish that you want to just articulate? We're going to do it with about a minute each so that we can stay in our time frame. Really excited, though, to warm up the table, if you will. We'll then follow with some introductions so that making sure that Odo has a chance to introduce their project team, also making sure that our technical group as well as the facilitation team do some introductions, and hopefully it'll feel like we are just getting to know each other a little bit in this early section. We'll then at 10 o'clock move straight into the substance, and it's a really important foundational opportunity. Again, it's more of a tip of an iceberg. We have lots of background materials for you, lots of great links that you can access on your own, but this is a chance to figure out the who, what, where, when, and why from Odo, to understand what is this Oregon energy strategy, why is it so important to the state, and what are the interests that the agency and that this team is wanting both out of the process as well as with you. We'll take a short break, we'll come back, and we'll talk about the advisory group charter. So a high-level review of what's the purpose of a charter, what's our hope and expectations for today's meeting, as well as next steps. We'll then have an opportunity just to really briefly talk about your next 2 meetings that are coming up. What are the topics we hope to cover? How can we help you help us by preparing for those meetings, confirm any next steps, and we'll adjourn by noon. I do want to say that in each of these sections, we're going to have a brief chance for some Q&A and group discussion. We are going to follow this format of please try to hold your questions during that time. Sometimes it helps to scribble it down for yourselves to remember questions that you might have. Or if it's more helpful, you can drop them into the chat and we'll try to collect them up there. We'll probably just briefly be able to address any questions. So it's going to be important that we capture them and we can always take them, queue them up, answer after the meeting, or do so by the next meeting. Gilly, I think you can go on to the next slide here. And then just a couple group agreements. You'll always see these at meetings. We know you're in these kinds of settings a lot, but it helps to be really explicit. So for this agenda for today, for most of our meetings, here they are. First, it's just honoring the agenda or modify by agreement. And it just means we have a lot to cover. Let's try to stay on topic. If we have extra ones, let's put them in a bin list, parking lot, bike rack, whatever we want to call it, and we'll hang on to them for future meetings. Next is listening carefully, seeking to understand, and really just thinking about why. Why are people asking what they're asking, and how can I help? Encouraging respectful, candid, and constructive conversation, keeping an open mind, asking questions to understand, be open, transparent, inclusive, and accountable. It's hard in these settings to always track the body language to know what's going on. Let's try to make sure we can check that out with each other and keeping the conversation really, if you will, kind of both in the room and out of the room, is thinking from this moment forward, you're building this rapport as a group and building a foundation by keeping it open and transparent. Respecting differing opinions. It adds to the robust discussion. It's important to be comfortable to disagree, and we're going to encourage that and staying respectful. Seeking to resolve differences when possible and finding common ground, being conscious of speaking time, stepping back, and making sure if you talk a lot, take a little break and step back. If you find yourself being quieter, push yourself to jump in a little more. And then finally, just limiting side conversations. A little different when we're on the screen, but trying not to multitask if possible and kind of holding your attention here if you can. We know you have a lot of obligations, and just staying here and present. Okay, thanks. Next slide. So there's going to be more and more meeting materials over time. So just at this kickoff meeting, a few logistics. All of the meeting materials can always be found at the Odo Energy Strategy Advisory Group webpage. So you go onto the website, you'll see a section, you can click on this link. We're also going to drop these in the chat to make it easy for you. Gilly just put it in right now. I also want to say to the members of the public, you're going to be seeing these same documents as they get posted. Things like these slides will be posted after the meetings. So we run them live, if you will, at the meeting, but everybody can find them at the website after the meeting. We'll also be creating a high-level meeting summary. That document will get posted to the website, and we're recording these sessions. So either if you miss it or if you want to go back and check a piece, we'll have those available also. Please note to the public, and It's one of these settings where in a perfect world, we'd all be in a big room together and you could kind of feel the presence of how much public is with us. We are grateful and appreciative that you're here. You are in what we call observer mode as an audience to this meeting. So even if you raise your hand, we can't bring you into the queue. We have a lot to cover at this one. So we specifically kept it in observer mode. We do have a chance that if you have some comment or reflections you want to submit, there's a link right here. Members of the public are welcome to provide their input to Odo, and it's got a link. You can drop it in and it'll go straight in to the project team. Okay, next slide. Okay, Gilly, can I have you handle the tips and tricks of being in Zoom?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Deb. So these are just a couple of Zoom tips and tricks that we'll go through real quick. So the first one is that we're asking folks to rename themselves, which is to include your name, pronouns, and affiliation. You'll see that the project team is a good example of what we're hoping that can look like. And then we're asking that if you have a question during the meeting to raise your hand. You'll see the raise hand function in the bottom left hand of your screen. If you're joining by phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. And if you have a technical question, so you are having issues with your Zoom or you're wondering how something works, you can send those questions directly to me. So you'll select the chat and then you'll select Gillian Garber-Yance. I'm the Zoom manager for this meeting, and you can ask your question to me. All other questions, we're asking folks to select everyone so that those questions will go to the members of the public and the advisory group members, as well as the project team, so that everybody can have access to the questions and comments. And this is just a quick look at where some of those functions are. So as I mentioned, mute button in the bottom left hand of your screen. Rename, you'll click participant, and then you'll go next to your name and select the little caret and select rename, and then rename yourself. Reactions is in the, or raise hand is in the reactions. And then again, chat is in more chat. And this drop down right here is where you would select everyone to provide a comment to the advisory group and members of the public, as well as the project team, and then select just my name, Gillian Garber-Yance, and I can put that in the chat if you have a Zoom technical question.
Perfectly done. Thank you. I'm sure it answered all your questions. And again, if you have any problems, don't hesitate to ask. So just one last tidbit before we transition into the introductions, which is the role of the facilitator. So for any of us here on the Kearns and West team, and Ben Duncan and I are the co-facilitators for this process, and pleased to be here for this, we are neutrals. So we come here on behalf of the process. We are paid by Odo to do this work as a consulting firm, but we work on behalf of everyone. And it's our job really to be here to help the process be constructive and productive, to be as effective as possible for all of you. We want you to lean hard on us. We're very thick-skinned. We love this job and we love the privilege of working with all of you. So push back. And our neutrality is precious to us. So if you think we're not doing our job well, tell us. And if ultimately the group thinks we're not effective, fire us and get somebody else. And we say that in all seriousness because it's a role we have to play for everyone. And so just as the last piece is that we have no stake in the outcome. You are the experts. You bring an incredible wealth of knowledge, advice, wisdom to this table. And Odo is grateful for your time and energy and willingness to be here. So that's what it's all about. So we're excited to get started, and we're going to transition right now to the introductions. And Edith, I kind of put it out of order. It's really kicking it off with you and introducing the project team, and then we'll do the ones around the table. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, so I'm very briefly going to introduce the project team. In the interest of time, we're not going to all come off camera and introduce ourselves, but I'll just run through this slide. So you'll see on camera Alan Zelenka, our Assistant Director for Planning and Innovation here at Odo. Jessica Reichers is manager of the Policy and Innovation team. I work on that team and am team lead for this project. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of the structure. And then we have a series of working groups that we will be convening over the summer. We've essentially taken the whole energy system and divided it up by topic, and then we'll be deep diving in. And the way that I thought I'd introduce the team is by who's co-leading each of those groups. So you can see here the names of folks who are going to be leading those meetings. Direct use fuels and industry, we have Michael Friels and Tom Elliott. Electricity generating technologies, Joni Sliger and myself. Transportation, Jillian DeMedio and Evan Elias. transmission and distribution, Jason Searman and Rob Delmar. Buildings, Lee Schlide, Stephanie Cruz, and Mary Capriva. Energy efficiency and load flexibility, Andy Cameron and myself. Equity and environmental justice, Lauren Rosenstein is leading along with me, and land use and natural resources. We have Michael Friels and Amy Schlesser. There are a lot more people at Odo who are informing this project, but this is just to familiarize yourself with the names and to hear them uttered at least once before we dive in. And with that, Deb, I'm going to hand it back to you, because I think now we're going to do introductions of the advisory group folks in the room.
Yep, great, thank you. So Gilly, can you take down the slide deck for a sec? Well, let me first it's okay, leave it down. What he had up on the slide that I told him to take down was name, affiliation, who you're representing here at the table, and this hopes and expectations for the process. We're doing about a minute each. So this is going to be a bit chunky because there's a lot of faces on the screen. I have in front of me what's a close to alphabetical list, and I'm actually going to call off a name and ask the person to speak. And Gilly, can you spotlight as the person speaking? I'm not sure if it shows up on my screen that way, but it'd be a nice way to give the person just a moment in the light, if you will, for their minute. And I have a few people that I think might be missing or have some substitutions in today. So we'll just get started. And at the end, if I missed you, then we're going to have people raise their hands, and then I'll make sure to catch everybody else. Okay. So first up is Aaron Orlowski. Aaron, are you here? Wave.
I am here.
What did you get for having an A as a first name? Okay.
Yeah, double A. It's a blessing and a curse. My name's Aaron Orlowski. I am work on the communications team at the Eugene Water and Electric Board, so representing eWeb. I handle communications for our energy division and all of our media relations. But a little bit about me, I spent the first half of my career in journalism. Back in the day, I actually covered the North Dakota Bakken oil boom, and that in a small little town there. And that kind of kicked off my interest in energy, and I've been pursuing it really ever since. But I'm excited to represent, Oregon's third largest utility, the largest publicly owned one, and the interests of our folks in Eugene. My hope for participating in this process is that we can develop a strategy that is really relevant and understandable for average Oregonians. But it's not, something filled with technical gobbledygook that no one without an engineering degree can understand, but something that average Oregonians can really embrace. So hopefully we can do that together. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Aaron, and welcome. And I'm going to mention in advance, I may mispronounce some of your names, so please help me. And with a name like Noodleman, I'm comfortable with it, but I'm going to try my best. So next up is Andrea Kreiner. Is Andrea here? So Gilly, I'm going to hold a little space in in case some of these folks are coming late. Will you help me? Okay, and I'll check once more at the end.
Yep.
Okay, great for that. Thank you. So next I have Andrew Mulkey. Brian Adams.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, was trying to get off mute. So Brian Adams, I'm representing the Pacific Propane Gas Association, representing the propane industry, obviously within the Pacific Northwest. Also sit on the National Propane Gas Association Renewable Energy Subcommittee, and a ambassador for renewable propane with the Propane Education and Research Council. I'm the president and CEO of Coenergy Propane, a Oregon-based propane delivery company that's owned by 2 rural electric co-ops here in Oregon that make up 68,000 members of those co-ops. And I'm really interested in participating to help kind of shape the future of the energy complex for Oregon. the shift towards decarbonization of the energy complex is important, and something I fully support, and just welcome the opportunity to provide my input and expertise in the areas that I come from. So looking forward to meeting the group.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. We are thinking there might be a few advisory group members stuck in the listening mode and can't talk to us. So we're hoping that if you're in the audience and you're supposed to be up here with the advisory group, could you either raise your hand or you can press *9. Both of those will tell our team to help promote you up and get you into the advisory group table. Okay, so hoping that might happen for a few of you. So that was Brian. I have next Kathy Ellie. Next, Charity Fain.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charity Fain. I'm the Executive Director at Community Energy Project, or CEP. I use she, her pronouns. I'm representing on this committee environmental justice organizations and concerns. We do energy efficiency and renewables, and really look at those most impacted by climate change. And for the process, I really just hope that we're all able to, I'm going to try to focus myself on listening and really trying to be open to the process, and just want to see what we can co-create together. Because I feel like in other conversations, no matter what point of view we're coming from, we do all actually care about the communities we live in. And we all do want to see improvements in the world that we're sharing. So even if we don't necessarily all agree on how to get there, we all do share that common value of really caring about the communities we're in. So thanks. I'm glad to be part of this.
Great. Great to have you with us. Thank you. I'm watching a few of the chat comments, and folks are letting us know that when they're in listening mode, they can't actually raise their hands or hit *9. And so I'm not sure if there's a way they can rename on their screen so we can figure out if there's anybody else that we need to promote, or if there's a way to text or email. Gilly, maybe? Yes.
Yeah, Deb, folks should be able to hit *9 and raise their hand now. We've
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
All right. So we've got that fixed. Good. We're still going to keep moving along. Thank you. Next, I have Christine Golightly.
Hi, yes, thanks. Christine Golightly. I'm a policy analyst with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. We are a commission of 4 tribes in the Northwest. So Umatilla and Warm Springs, both in Oregon. And I see, well, Kathy Eli was Warm Springs. I'm not sure if she's on, but I see you have representatives from both on the advisory group. So that's great. We are and then the others are Nez Perce in Idaho and Yakima in Washington. And we're a commission representing the 4 tribes in their treaty fishing rights and protection of those rights and the salmon that make up those rights. In spring of 2022, we produced a energy vision for the Columbia River Basin, and I can pop that in the chat here when I'm done for people to check out. It's a vision for our green transition in the Pacific Northwest in a way that is also fish friendly. We have concerns about too rapid and unorganized energy transition will put the burden on the tribes and on the fisheries, as it did in the past with the creation of the dams in the first place. And so I'm here. My hope is to just be able to relay our energy vision and our recommendations within that into the Oregon strategy.
Thank you and welcome. So we were just able to promote Kathy. Is it Ellie?
Eli, yes.
Eli.
Good morning.
Close. Thank you. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Kathy Eli. So I'm the Executive Director for Warm Springs Power and Water Enterprises. It's a chartered enterprise for the Warm Springs Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And our mission is to oversee the tribe's interests in the Pelton Round Butte hydroelectric project, who is the tribes are a partner owner with Portland General Electric, as well as advance renewable energy projects on the reservation. So I've been in this role for a couple of years. And prior to that, I had a long federal career at Bonneville Power Administration. So I've been in the energy industry for forever. And the tribe has more recently been quite active in its development of transmission opportunities and was a recipient of the DOE GRIP grant to help upgrade an existing PGE transmission line. And the reason I mention that is in doing that grant, which I think we've all probably participated in that effort, which is quite a lift, but it became clear to me that the alignment of energy policy, a clear line of sight from the local to the state to the federal level was really important. And we stressed that alignment in our application. And I'm convinced that was helpful in us being successful in that endeavor. So my hope in this effort is to get the tribes integrated as a course of business in energy policy development, and then also at the front end, such that their proposals and processes and concerns are considered early on, because they can be quite informative to the process to help it in the long run to avoid some obstacles. So great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. So next up is Corey Scott.
Good morning, everybody. Corey Scott with Pacific Power. As some of you know, Pacific Power serves a lot of communities, about 243 communities across Oregon, Washington, Northern California. So a couple hundred communities in Oregon in kind of a patchwork setting from northeast part of the state with significant portions of service in Southern Oregon, along the coast, other rural parts of the state. I'm in customer and community solutions. And so I've been at the company a number of years, probably getting close to 20 years now. I spent the last number of years anyway in customer programming, energy efficiency, demand response, voluntary renewables, transportation electrification programs. So that's often the lens I view a lot of opportunities in energy planning work with, and certainly something I hope to bring to this group as well. And I guess to conclude, I'd maybe follow up to a comment Aaron started with around making this an accessible and understandable plan over time. I thought that was really thoughtful. And I'd maybe add the idea of flexibility and tied to sound technical analysis into that mix, because it's kind of how I think of what we hope the outcome should be. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. So next up is Ellsworth Lane. Are you here, Ellsworth? I don't think I saw. Gilly, no. Okay. How about Emily Griffith?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Griffith. I'm with Renewable Northwest. We're a renewable energy advocacy nonprofit based here in Oregon, and I'm our Oregon policy manager. We worked on House Bill 3630 in 2023 because we have our clean energy mandate, but we really saw a need for Oregon to have a plan and a comprehensive strategy for how we'll reach our clean energy mandate. So I'm really happy to be here and happy that we've been welcomed back, and hoping to just help inform energy strategy. We work in the regulatory space, policy space, and markets and transmission space. So I'm just hoping to help bring some of the expertise from the Renewable Northwest folks to this strategy. So thanks.
Thank you and welcome. Next up, Erin Childs.
Good morning, everyone. Erin Childs, Executive Director with RHA. Very pleased to be joining folks this morning. RHA, the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, is focused on accelerating a transition to renewable hydrogen across the Pacific Northwest. And so from our perspective, we're very interested to engage with this group to get a clear understanding on how renewable hydrogen will be able to support the state's energy, environment, and economic goals. We're seeing a lot of interest in hydrogen across transportation, industrial sectors, and energy resilience. And this kind of integrated process is really helpful for us to get an overall view on how we'll be supplying that hydrogen, how we'll be transporting it, and some of the end uses we're expecting to see be most common. So very excited to be working with folks and learning through this process.
Thank you. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Fred, is it Hutt? Help me. Is Fred here?
Morning, everybody. Thanks. It's Fred Hewitt, Northwest
Hewitt.
Energy Coalition Senior Policy Associate. Our alternate for this group will be Alma Pinto, our Environmental Justice Policy Associate, who's also here in the Portland area. Great to be here. The Northwest Energy Coalition is about 100 organizations, primarily an organizational coalition. In the 4 Northwest states, we also have some members in British Columbia. We have environmental, civic, human service organizations, utilities, and businesses. Plus, we also have individual membership. I have quite a lot of those. Our mission is to advance clean, equitable, and affordable energy policies. I've been involved in the Oregon energy policy world for quite a while. In fact, involved in the early legislation that had Odo doing the state energy plan. That has now been replaced by the biennial energy report, and this process, the energy strategy. So I'm really thrilled about that. It's a big step up in the direction where we need to be. I'm very glad to be here, and thanks.
Thank you and welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Ivy Quach.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you guys could see me here. I had some issues before on getting on board as a panelist here, but I'm really honored to be on this team with everybody here, with all the experiences that you guys have. Just a little bit about myself here. I'm currently the CFO and operations here for QB Fabrication and Welding. We specialize in manufacturing transmission towers and substations and distributions all over the Northwest, from Canada to the city of San Francisco even. We work a lot of general contractors and the counties as well. We've worked with PGE as well and PacifiCorp, and primarily we are the preferred vendor for Bonneville Power Administration. And we've been in business for over 37 years. So I'm very excited to be a part of this team. I have a lot of wealth of knowledge too of how transmissions kind of work at it. What are the issues that are coming up? What type of programs and projects are coming out with that? Just because we deal with a lot of contractors that are currently in the plays with this, and primarily big one, as you know, is BPA. So I'm looking to provide some inputs as well, and looking to hear from everybody else and learning. So simply, this is such a great thing to hear from all the groups here. Thank you.
Great to have you with us. Thank you so much. So next up is Jeff Hammerland.
Jeff Hammerland's pronounced correctly. Thank you, Deb. I am indeed Jeff Hammerland, and I'm not really representing a specific stakeholders to the best of my knowledge. I'm listed in the team sheet there, the member sheet, as retired professor and senior fellow, and that's accurate. But I'd like to say I'm actually a semi-retired professor, because I still have about a 15% appointment with the Portland State University Center for Public Service, and I chair our graduate certificate program in energy policy and management. So still a couple fingers in that pie, but not representing PSU per se. I guess I would, so I'm as a semi-retired professor, I would say my superpower that I'm trying to bring to this group, there's 2 things. Number one, I have about 2,000 former students who are working in the energy field. Many of them, most of them in Oregon, including the few people who are on this call right now. I was delighted to see. I also bring a lot of institutional memory. I'm almost 74 years old. I've been working in this field for many, many years. I taught at PSU for 30 years, but before that I had an energy career. I worked for the U.S. Senate Energy Committee, senior manager at Southern California Edison, senior policy analyst at the Public Power Council. Let's see, consultant to CritVic, chair of the Oregon caucus of the Northwest Energy Coalition for 10 years, etc. So I hope to bring a lot of institutional memory to this process. That would probably be my other major contribution would be, I'm on an advisory committee for BPA for many years, and they would say, hey, Grandpa, tell us what happened in 1982 now. Did we try this in 1982? And I said, well, yeah, we did, but here's what worked and here's what didn't work. So I hope to be able to bring that institutional memory to this process. And I'm looking forward very much to working with everybody. I'm very excited about being able to continue to be able to contribute.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Jennifer Bees.
Good morning, everyone. So I am the Director of Environmental for the Port of Portland. And the port runs 3 airports, 4 marine terminals, and 5 industrial business parks. So we're just really motivated to figure out what is the future of decarbonized transportation look like? What's the role that we can play using our assets, given we're really intermodally connected? We're doing a ton of work on our own emissions, but that is really dwarfed by our business partners ultimately that leverage our assets. So really excited about the possibility to forge alignment and partnerships and connections, because the more we have of that, the faster we can move. And clearly there's some urgency here. So really excited about this process.
Welcome, Jen. Next up, Jennifer Hill-Hart.
Morning. Hi, my name is Jennifer Hill-Hart. I use she, her pronouns. I am with the Oregon Citizens Utility Board. I am the Policy and Program Director. We are a statewide nonprofit that represents the interests of Oregonians in utility proceedings before the Public Utility Commission and also at the legislature. Very excited about being on this group. Thrilled to have been accepted. We're really looking forward to just working collaboratively with all the groups that are, all the interests and agencies that are involved in Oregon's newer energy policies and seeing them get implemented more efficiently. We hope and figuring out best ways to save costs for Oregonians for meeting all of our energy goals.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Jimmy Lindsay is up.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jimmy Lindsay. Thanks for including me. I'm here representing Portland General Electric, the electric-only utility here in Oregon, the largest electric utility centered with a service territory centered around the northern Willamette Valley. At PGE, my role includes oversight of the integrated resource plan and distribution system plan process, which are exercises that PGE performs to identify, the activities that the electric utility needs to perform over the next 20, 30 years. And that work is very informed by the strategy of the state with respect to its energy policy. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from this group of persons on the course we take and contributing to that discussion. So thanks for including me.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, John Dietz.
Yes, John Dietz. I'm actually filling in for Scott Sims, Public Power Council. I serve on the Public Power Council as the Vice Chair, Long Range Planning. And I also am the General Manager for McMinnville Water and Light, the oldest utility in Oregon. And my interest here would be how this will impact our rural communities. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Welcome. I do want to pause and just say we're more than halfway through the list, so we're hanging in there. And then I was gently asking the advisory committee members to leave your screens on if possible. I'll let you breathe through that. Some folks listen better with it off. If it's at all possible, it helps us feel like we're sitting around a table together. So just mentioning that. Next up is Joshua Bassifin.
Good morning, I'm Joshua Bassafin. I'm the Clean Energy Program Director at Climate Solutions. Climate Solutions is a PNW-based climate advocacy group. We work in Washington and Oregon exclusively on clean energy policy, and my work is on our Oregon team. I'm very excited that we have an energy strategy in Oregon. Our neighbors to the north and south have had an energy strategy for several years, and I think it's important regionally that we're consistent with our West Coast neighbors. I'm hopeful that this will be a mechanism to help us implement some of the very ambitious climate and clean energy policies that we have instituted over the last few years. We've been very busy in creating policy, and I think we need to get really busy in implementing policy now, and particularly thinking about HB 2021, our 100% clean energy law, which requires a lot of different moving pieces and processes, policy processes. And I'm hopeful that the energy strategy will help us kind of start to aggregate some of the things that we need for a clean energy transition in Oregon. Thanks.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Juan Barraza.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Juan Barraza. I'm the Executive Director of Latino Founders. We're a nonprofit supporting Latino-led ventures to scale in the state of Oregon, the Pacific Northwest. We're based in Portland, Oregon. And what we hope to achieve in this process, we are part of the coalition with some of the folks in the call, the PowerEyes, where we have a working ground with the NSF engines and EDA hubs to be able to implement and deploy smart grid technology and smart energy storage in the Pacific Northwest. Our hope is with this process being able to connect the work we're doing with PowerEyes with the larger effort that everybody's embarking today. So great to be here.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Can I pause? I think for Nature Conservancy.
Yeah.
There you are. Great. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, hi. My name is Lauren Link. I use she, her pronouns. So I am sitting in for Laura Tabor, who will be the main representative, but we're kind of tag teaming this effort. And so the Nature Conservancy is a science-based nonpartisan organization. We work all across the state and all corners of the state on various conservation issues. We're pretty excited to be at the table. You know, we're really looking in the conversation to balance the needs of people and nature. And we're also really excited that the state is investing in proactive energy planning. So yeah, just happy to be here.
Thank you and welcome. And Lauren, you were an L, so you stayed right in the queue. Good job there. Well done. Next up is Mary Morelands.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Mary Morelands. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Environmental Policy and Corporate Responsibility at Northwest Natural. I'm pleased to be a member of this group representing a regional investor-owned utility that is committed to operating a reliable and resilient system to deliver a decreasingly carbon-intensive product to our customers. And through this process, I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to find some shared wins for all Oregonians, you know, as we consider how our energy system is working today and how to position it for success in the future. So I look forward to the discussions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Michael Colgrove.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. My name is Mike Colgrove. I'm the Executive Director at Energy Trust of Oregon, and I use he, him pronouns. Really excited and to be on this, and thank Odo for having Energy Trust represented here. Energy Trust is a nonprofit organization. We run energy efficiency and renewable energy programs for the customers of 5 of the investor-owned utilities here in Oregon. So that would be PGE and Pacific Power, and the 3 gas utilities, Northwest Natural, Avista, and Cascade Natural Gas. And I'm really excited. I know this has been a long time coming, ever since Odo really recommended doing a state energy strategy. And glad to see this finally kicking off and being part of it. And I will say, in addition to offering whatever perspective, expertise, or experience that I and Energy Trust can offer. Really, really interested in hearing other people's priorities, their thoughts and input into the process. So really, really looking forward to this whole effort. Thank you.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Nate Hill.
Yeah, hi, Nate Hill. I'm here on behalf of Amazon Web Services. Thanks for inviting us to be a part of this important group. I'm here, I use he, him pronouns. I'm here to represent sort of the end user community. So we are a large user of electricity and hydrogen and all sorts of fuels that'll be necessary to decarbonize not only our operations, but I think can help with the state and the region's operations as well. So I'm excited to be a part of this discussion and to see how the end user community can help and inform our policy going forward. Thanks.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Patrick Ford Mills.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Patrick Mills with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. I'm climate coordination analyst, work in the Office of the Executive Director, chemical engineer and project manager by trade, and also a member of the tribe's energy strategy team. Just looking forward to contributing to the development of an actionable strategic energy plan. Went through the process just a few years ago here with the tribe, and so familiar with it, and thanks for having me here.
Welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Next up, I think I have an alternate for Daimler. Is it Rakesh Aneja? Thought I saw Gilly.
I'm not seeing Rakesh in our attendees.
I think we thought Rakesh was going to be able to join. Is there somebody from Daimler? Maybe not. Okay, we'll put that on the next up. How about Robert Wallace?
Yes.
There you are. Hi.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Wallace. I'm with East RC&D, Resource Conservation Development. We're based in the Dalles, Oregon, North Central Oregon. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm a certified energy manager. And so our work usually, most of our work's with rural customers. And so we work throughout Oregon. We've had contracts with Bonneville Power, Energy Trust, of Oregon to help deliver some of their energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. We also have received funding through rural development to be a technical assistance for programs such as the REAP program statewide. So most of our work is with rural small businesses and agriculture producers. We've done a lot of work with the irrigators, the farmers throughout the state. We've also got some programs, e-farms, testing out electric tractors, electric vehicles in rural areas. We've done some work with trying to help figure out where to put EV charging in some of our rural counties, creating some guidebooks there. And so my interest is the rural areas, resiliency, and agriculture. And I was going to say, in addition to that, I'm the chair of the school board. And so we've done a number of energy projects at the school. And I'm also the president of the Port of the Dalles. And so kind of a variety of different interests that we have. And again, I hope to provide a voice from the rural areas and some of the project work that we do. So thank you for having us as part of this team.
Great. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Next up, Shannon Souza.
There we go. Coming through.
Shannon, you're coming through a little garbled. Can you move your microphone? Try microphone a little bit closer to your mouth, and we'll see if it helps.
Is that helping?
Yeah, wonderful. Yes.
Got any better?
Yes.
There we go. So I'll just keep that on. I have about 25 years of experience in rural Oregon out on the coast, primarily in energy efficiency, rooftop solar, and energy storage. I have about 6 years of policy work. I played a formative role in our solar and storage grant fund in adding energy storage to the GET program, and then with the birth of Ocean Oregon Clean Energy Alliance Network and with the founding president, we've been working on offshore wind, understanding that from a community perspective, as well as renewable hydrogen. I sit on the board of OCEA, and also representing that organization here. And for the last 3 years, have been spending a lot of time on behalf of the plan of seeding renewables, working in Washington and Oregon rural communities to better understand the roles and opportunities for renewable hydrogen and other clean skin fuels, whether they are derived from electrons or renewable ions. My hope for this work is that we can tap into the diverse profile of this group of advisors and come up with some strategies that can be readily communicated at the end of the day to Oregonians so that they can understand the implications for their own communities of the decisions that we make with respect to what energy sources we have, how proximate they are to our community needs, and what those ultimate forward-looking costs will be. Thanks for having me.
Thank you and welcome. Next is Tim McMahon. Not sure I saw Tim on screen. Okay, Tucker Billman.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tucker Billman. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Oregon Rural Electric Cooperative Association, or ORECA for short, because I know it's a mouthful. ORECA represents the state's 18 not-for-profit consumer-owned electric utility electric cooperatives that cover the geographic majority of the state and serve about 420,000 Oregonians, which we refer to as members. Many of you would refer to as customers. But our end users own the cooperatives. They vote for our boards of directors. And so we're truly a locally owned resource. We operate at profit. And if we have, or at cost, and if we have a profit, we return that to the members in the form of a capital credit. And so that's who we are. We cover all corners of the state and through Central Oregon along the gorge. And so we have a good span of kind of everywhere in the state. And we rely on the hydroelectric power that's produced on the Columbia River Power System and the Lower Snake River dams, and that is marketed by BPA. I've heard BPA mentioned many times here today. Incredibly important for us. It's clean power. It's incredibly reliable, and it gives us some of the cheapest rates in the country. And so ORECA's members and the member owners of these electric cooperatives are benefit greatly from the hydroelectric projects. And so those are a huge priority for us, and you'll hear me talking about those frequently as a part of this group. So thanks for having me. I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Welcome, glad to have you with us. So I want to pause at this time for anybody I named but wasn't here yet. Team, can you help me? Are there any more advisory committee members I missed? Either raise your hand or jump on in. All right, so I think for today we have our table. I will be slightly wistful of my day sitting in a room with all of you. We're around the table, and I love tent cards. You know, those little name tents that you can just pop up. We can see each other's names. You can kind of feel the whole table. So this is as close as we're getting today. We're really grateful and appreciative for all of you being here. It's quite exciting. What I want to do next in these last couple minutes is just let the rest of the project team introduce themselves. So I'd like to turn now to Eileen Quigley. Go ahead. And Gilly, you can pop back up the slide.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Eileen Quigley, and I am the Executive Director of the Clean Energy Transition Institute. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization whose mission is to accelerate an equitable clean energy transition in the Northwest. We provide unbiased data and analytics to help policymakers, advocates, businesses, and government agencies in the 4 Northwest states, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington, understand what it takes to achieve a clean energy transition economically, technically, and equitably. ODO selected our team in a competitive bidding process to develop an energy pathways analysis for Oregon's energy strategy. For the past 6 years, CETI has been partnering with Evolve Energy Research to produce economy-wide energy pathways analyses for Washington, Oregon, and Montana. In addition to Evolved Energy, the CETI team includes 2 Oregon-based consultants, Angela Long of Rockcrest Consulting and Elaine Hart of Moment Energy Insights. From September 2024 through January 2025, our team will model different energy pathways based on input from Odo and stakeholders on the pressing energy questions that must be debated as Oregon develops its energy strategy. In addition to providing energy pathways analysis, the CETI team will also model health and economic impacts of reducing fossil fuel use and incorporate other co-benefits of greenhouse gas emission reduction and environmental justice consideration. Our technical analysis is only one part of the strategy that offers guidance for the policy and strategy discussions that Odo and stakeholders will have in developing the Oregon energy strategy throughout 2025. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Eileen. Welcome, team. Much appreciated. So next up, Kearns and West introductions. So just really briefly, I already had a chance to say hi. Deb Noodleman, principal owner and a senior mediator here at Kearns and West. Our company provides specifically neutral process support. We have offices around the country. This whole team that's working on the project is based here in Portland, Oregon. We've all been around for a long time, and we say what we do is environmental, public policy, multi-party. We kind of call it big table work, which means that we love working with representation of diverse interests coming together to argue mightily and have robust dialogues to find conclusions that best meet your joint interests. And so that's a sandbox we tend to play in, and we think this is a great one to be having joined in again with our neutral process support. And then I just want to turn to Ben Duncan, my co-facilitator, for just a sec so he can say hi to the group.
Hi, group. So Ben Duncan, Vice President, Senior Facilitator at Kearns and West. And Deb, you really named it. It's just a real privilege to be able to be in this space with you all, just listening and reflecting on the introductions and the hopes and the vision that you all laid out. It's very exciting to imagine the journey that we'll be able to go on together. Thanks, Deb.
Great, thank you. And then Gilly Garber-Yance, you've been hearing from him already. He's what we call the hub to the spoke. So you'll get lots of contact from him, and he helps hold the process together, our project manager. And then Nicole Metelli is here somewhere, and she's helping with note taker, logistics, and multitude of other tasks. So we're all glad to be here and leaning in with the rest of you. So here we go into the first kickoff for our substance, and we're going to transition to a new set of slides. We're going to have Edith. Ben, you're going to kick it off, and then Edith.
Yeah, I'll be really briefly. Good job on time. We're right at 10:04. That's pretty good after hearing everyone's introduction. So we're going to hear a presentation from the Oregon Department of Energy team and Edith Bayer. And as Deb said earlier, you know, this will both be foundation and tip of the iceberg. So hopefully we're going to provide some initial clarity for where the work is headed and where our work will be going forward together. And so we're going to have a presentation and then really ask you to hold your questions, as Deb again said earlier. Either jot your questions down if you want to put them in the chat so you don't lose what you'd like to ask, and we can capture those. That would be great. But with that, Edith, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks everybody again. I want to let everybody know we've built in a break in the agenda. It comes after this presentation, but since we're all remote, I encourage everyone to just like stand up and stretch if you need to. I'm standing up right now. I have a desk that moves up and down. So just, I realize it's hard to pay attention for so long, but I really appreciated the introductions and just hearing from you all and hearing what everybody brings to the table and what your hopes are for this process. What I'd like to do to start us off is to just give a little bit of, and if we can go to the next slide, a little bit of an overview of why we're working on an energy strategy, talking about an energy strategy. I think probably everybody has an idea in their minds, and some of you might have heard us present on this before, but I think it's important to bring us all to the same page. Then I'll talk a little bit about the scope of the energy strategy and the process that we envision over the next year and a half. I'll outline the opportunities that we've built in for engagement and where the advisory group falls within that. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. I'm sure that there might be some questions coming up, and I encourage folks to just jot those down and be ready for them when we get to the end. So with that, we can go to the next slide. And I think it's just a transition slide, so we can just jump one more. And so this is, some of you might be familiar with this. This is a Sankey diagram from our 2022 biennial energy report. There's a new one coming out in just a few months. And the reason I'm showing this is that it's really kind of a flow chart that gives you the starting point of where we are today. On the far left, it shows you where our energy comes from. And I think it's really important just to remember that we produce a lot of the energy that we use, but we import even more than that. And so we're not, when we're talking about an Oregon energy strategy, we're talking about Oregon in a broader energy context, and that's always important to keep in mind. This graph also breaks down kind of what's producing that energy, what's coming from hydro up top. I'm kind of moving from left to right here, and then hydro down to wind. You can see all of these different resources down to natural gas and petroleum. And then that energy is, a lot of it is converted into electricity, and a lot of it is also used directly. So when you pump gas into your car, that's just a direct use. When you heat your home with natural gas, that's a direct use. Of course, we have a lot of electric end uses too. And so this graph kind of shows that piece too. And then it gives you a sort of visual representation of where we use that energy. And if you go to the far right, a lot of that energy is actually wasted. And so that is one of the chief reasons why energy efficiency and conservation is so incredibly important. And then you can see the energy that we use. And so if you were to just have two takeaways from this very busy slide, I would say first, we use a lot of energy from a lot of different sources for a lot of different purposes. And secondly, some of that energy is produced in Oregon, and a lot of it is produced outside of Oregon today. So if we go to the next slide, this is a little bit of a different way of depicting how we use energy. You can see on the left the energy sources that produce our energy with some pictures and words. So you can see that you can see the role of hydro power, of natural gas, petroleum, coal, solid fuels, biofuels, and wind and other resources. And then on the right, you can see where that energy goes. So one of the things that really has struck me as we were doing introductions is how broad the perspectives in the room are, and they're necessarily broad and diverse because the energy system really touches on everything. And so even at a high level, we can see that 29% of our energy is used for transportation, 25% in homes, 27% for industrial purposes, and 19% in businesses. If we go to the next slide, I'm now zooming in a little bit to talk about electricity. So this is a view of the different resources. The size of the circle correlates to how much electricity that resource is accountable for producing for our state, both within the state and imported sources of electricity. And you can see hydro is the biggest bubble. And then we also have coal, natural gas, wind, and some others. And if you look at the next slide, we can see where the action needs to happen to meet our clean energy goals. So if you go to the next slide, the coal and natural gas sectors are where the majority of our electricity sector emissions are coming from. And that's where, as I said, the action needs to happen, to use shorthand, to comply with HB 2021 and our 100% clean electricity standard, which applies to the investor-owned utilities in our state. And if we go to the next slide, we'll zoom in, we'll kind of shift over to the transportation sector. And here, again, we can see that most of the energy powering our vehicles comes from gasoline and diesel. We have a bunch of other fuels here too, but those are the two big ones. And again, those fossil fuel resources are the chief sources of emissions in our state. And if we go to the next slide, they are also where the action is to decarbonize our transportation sector. And the climate protection program, which is in rulemaking right now, is a key driver for that objective of decarbonizing this sector. And we also have a bunch of other transportation related policies that are very important, very relevant. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to just zoom into buildings. So you have a graphic on residential energy use and commercial energy use. So here you see how the different sources of energy that we use in these sectors. So for residential energy use, you can see that electricity accounts for almost half of our energy consumption in homes. Natural gas accounts for a pretty big portion there too. It's actually too small for me to see here, but it's big. Then we also have biomass and some other resources. And in the commercial sector and commercial buildings, we see a similar breakdown, a little bit more electricity, a little bit less natural gas and biomass compared to residential. And so again, that kind of gives you a sense of where the carbon emissions are. Some of them are in electricity, but there's some clean electricity in the mix there too. Natural gas as well. We have some petroleum there as well. So if we go to the next slide. So that was kind of just to lay the groundwork for where we are today. And then, the question is why do we need an energy strategy? And I'll start by saying that we have ambitious energy and climate goals across the energy sector. There's no one policy telling us how to do it all. It's really complicated. And so there are a lot of things going on at the same time. And it's really important to pull together a vision for how we decarbonize, particularly because what happens in one sector has an impact on other sectors. If we increase the number of electric vehicles on the roads, that has an impact on the electricity sector and on fuels, for example. We also know that the costs of failing to achieve our mid-century clean energy and climate policy goals are really high, and they fall inequitably across Oregonians. In our 2022 biennial energy report, we evaluated 20 different studies that looked at ways that different states could achieve their clean energy goals. And evaluating those technical analyses showed us that there are multiple technology pathways to achieve mid-century policy goals, but there are a lot of choices to be made and trade-offs of those choices. And it's really important to understand what those trade-offs are and what the options are. And that's really what we're doing here. And it's really important to work together as Oregonians to chart an intentional course for the state's energy future that balances those trade-offs. If you go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit now of how we're going to do this. So what's the scope of this project, of the energy strategy, and what's the process that we have in mind? If we go to the next slide, the starting point is that and this comes from HB 3630, which directs Odo to lead this process. The energy strategy will, in the end, take the form of a final report that covers 3 areas. First, there'll be the technical analysis, which informs the pathways to achieve our energy policy objectives and the different trade-offs and how to maximize benefits in charting a course to achieve our state policy objectives. Second, we'll develop recommendations of policy options, and the technical analysis will help inform the policy evaluation, gap analysis, identification of opportunities, and recommendations. And finally, throughout, we will be engaging with you all, with Oregonians, and with tribes, with other agencies to inform the process. And in the final report, we will describe how that process was structured and how the perspectives that we heard informed the strategy. And we're working very hard to make sure that number 3 is very transparent and that we're being both inclusive and transparent throughout the process. We go to the next slide. This slide is it competes with the Sankey diagram on the busiest slide in this slide deck, I think. It pulls together what HB 3630 asks us to do in a little bit more of a visual framework. So on the left, you have the foundational things that need to inform the energy strategy. That starts with stakeholder perspectives. And then we need to ensure that as a starting point, we're taking into account existing laws, policies, targets, existing plans, including clean energy plans and integrated resource plans that we're aware of and learning from studies and data analyses that we can draw on, including not just ones in Oregon, but we're also looking, for example, at what the Northwest Power and Conservation Council is coming out with, BPA, PNUC. So we're looking at the big picture. And then in the middle is more of an elaboration on what the energy strategy needs to take into account. So you can see here, if you look at the bullets sort of on the left of the middle, we need to evaluate the options for how we produce, transport, and deliver energy, how we ensure that we're using that energy as efficiently as possible. We also need to consider important issues related to energy. Energy touches on everything and everyone, so it's important to look at the effects of different pathways on environmental justice, focus on community benefits, understand land use considerations, energy burden and affordability, making sure that certain communities aren't disproportionately impacted by the transition. We'll be looking at economic and employment impacts, energy security and the impacts of broader energy market discussions, energy resilience, which increasingly is a very important part of the discussion, and community energy resilience as well. And finally, on the far right is a framework that we have for how to ensure that when we are framing up our engagement, that we're being as inclusive, as diverse, and as thoughtful as possible, so that we're really hearing from different perspectives from across Oregon. And here at the bottom, there are just a couple of kind of foundational pieces. First, and I heard this in the comments earlier, it's really important that we reflect the best available information, data analysis, and time horizons to achieve the state's policy objectives. We'll be looking out to 2050, just to answer the time horizons piece. And the idea is to periodically update this analysis. So this is not meant to be a one and done. This is meant to be a process. We're going to learn from this process, and over time, we'll continue to learn as things change. Next slide, please. HB 3630 directs the energy strategy to develop pathways to meet Oregon's energy policy objectives, but doesn't define energy policy objectives. So this slide gives us a little bit more of a sense of where we're starting from. We have an economy-wide objective in the form of Executive Order 2004, and that objective is at least 80% greenhouse gas emission reductions by 2050. We also have a more specific, but also very broad-reaching objective in the form of HB 2021, which is our 100% clean energy standard by 2040 that covers electricity investor-owned utilities. And we have the Climate Protection Program, which covers natural gas, liquid fuels, and propane, and calls for a 90% greenhouse gas emission reduction level by 2050. So those are I would say, the anchor policies that are driving greenhouse gas emission reductions across the economy. At the same time, we have numerous other important policies that are helping to drive emissions reductions and shape the compliance pathways for often that feed into meeting these broader goals. This is just a sampling. We have many more, as I kind of indicate here in the words, but just to name a few, we have the Clean Fuels Program, Advanced Clean Cars 2, Advanced Clean Trucks, building codes, appliance standards. Those and many other policies also play a really important role in helping to drive us towards a clean energy transition. And our approach in the model will be to incorporate these policies into the modeling process and to look at what compliance would look like by 2050. So what the pathways are to meeting these various objectives by 2050. If we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the structures now that we have kind of built in to ensure that we're providing kind of various ways to engage in and inform the process. I think it's really important to emphasize that this is not just an academic exercise, very far from it. The whole process of developing an energy strategy is meant to be a conversation on how we undertake both the analysis, how we can learn from different perspectives to inform policy, and to work together on defining what steps we take next. There obviously is a technical portion of the analysis. We've hired CETI as consultants, but this piece is really important and will inform that process. So we have an interagency steering group that serves to ensure coordination between state agencies. Various agencies share responsibility over various policies, and so we're meeting to make sure that that coordination is happening about once a month. And you can see here the agencies that are listed as kind of the core participants in that group. That we're also talking to other agencies as well. So we're very conscious that this doesn't include all agencies that have an important voice in the discussions. Today we're meeting with you all, the advisory group, and we'll talk a little bit more about your role shortly, but I'll just say here that you're advising us throughout the process to help inform decisions that we're taking. We have, as we heard, diverse perspectives and lived experience and professional experience represented here from across Oregon. And you'll be meeting once a month, similar to the interagency steering group, to make sure that we are checking in regularly, giving you updates regularly, and hearing from you regularly to inform the process from kind of start, middle, and finish of each of the engagement kind of rounds that I'll talk about in a moment. We also have working groups, which are focused on the details of the modeling. So these are subject matter experts able to inform the modeling and the technical analysis, who will be meeting in July, starting next week, and through August of this year. We also are engaging in tribal consultation and government-to-government conversations to ensure that tribal perspectives inform the energy strategy. We're reaching out to the members of the 9 federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon, and to tribal organizations as well. And that's an ongoing process throughout. And we are organizing a series of listening sessions to collect broad views from across the state. This is perhaps the broadest opportunity. Anybody can join. It's not as much of a time commitment as a working group, for example. We want to make sure that we create this space where we, as Odo, can really listen and hear what folks have to say about priorities, about concerns, about the types of questions that they would like to see the energy strategy answer. And we have 2 listening sessions scheduled to inform the technical work, the modeling, also scheduled for next week. And we have one during business hours and one after hours to also help make sure that folks with different schedules can participate. Next slide, please. So this slide pulls together the project phases and key deliverables kind of over time, along with how we plan to consult with folks throughout this process. So right now we're in a phase where we're working on the technical approach on the modeling, and the timing is roughly July to the end of the year. And then early next year and into spring, we'll be developing policy recommendations. And then the final report is due by November 1st, 2025. It's actually due on Halloween. That's a Friday, so it'll be a Halloween deadline. So you can see that for both the technical approach and policy recommendations, those are really kind of 2 out of 3 sections of the final report. And so we envision a very similar process for how we would engage folks for both of those, to develop both of those parts of the energy strategy. So as I've mentioned, we've already scheduled listening sessions and working groups for the first phase for the technical approach. We'll be meeting with you all. We'll be meeting with the interagency group. We'll be consulting with tribes. We'll be engaging and reaching out to EJ and equity groups. And we also envision having public webinars kind of as bookends to to the process of developing the technical approach, and the same for the policy recommendations. So in June, we had a webinar to give a preview of what we had in mind for kind of outreach, and now we're starting that process. And then around September, we'll have another webinar where we'll explain where we've landed and provide an opportunity for folks to hear that, and to provide some feedback. And then when we have draft modeling results early next year, we'll have an opportunity for public written feedback, and we'll have another webinar then to present that piece. So we kind of envision the webinars to be previews and updates kind of throughout the process. As we develop the policy recommendations, we'll follow a similar process also for presenting draft policy recommendations, getting some feedback on that. And then towards kind of as we get into the summer, we'll be drafting the final report. We'll present a draft final report for feedback, and we'll work on finalizing that and delivering it to the governor and legislature by the deadline. Next slide, please. So I'm almost done. This is my last process slide, I promise, but I think it's important for everybody to just have a sense of what's happening when, with who, and why. So this is just a timeline with key deliverables. You can see 2024 and 2025 kind of up in light gray. So right now, the engagement to inform the modeling and technical analysis is from essentially the June 3rd date was the webinar where we kind of gave a preview of what was coming. And then by September 9th, we'll have to have finalized all of the discussions and come up with a final structure for what scenarios we're modeling and what inputs we'll be using. September roughly to December will be the time that the modeling will happen. We need to leave some time for that. It's a very labor intensive process. So that'll be happening. Preliminary results published probably early next year. Then we'll have final modeling results shortly after that once we've received some feedback and incorporated any feedback into the final results. And then we'll be engaging to inform the policy recommendations. There might be a bit of overlap there. We plan to start that engagement also early next year. In the spring, we'll draft policy recommendations. Early summer, we'll have a draft report for you all, and then final report by November. So that's the high level timeline. And then if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to zoom in briefly on the working group, since that's what's coming up next. In the process, next week, we're going to kick off the working groups. As I mentioned, we've split up the working groups into 8 areas. You can see them here. I've already named them when I introduced our team, so I won't read them again, but I just wanted to emphasize that this is how we're going to organize those technical discussions. And if we go to the next slide, we also have a calendar for those meetings that's also available online. So we'll have that kickoff next week on the 30th from 9 to 11 a.m. And then we'll have a bunch of kind of breakout meetings by topic group throughout August. Most groups will only meet once, we envision. We have some backup dates shaded here in gray. Land use and natural resources and environmental justice and equity groups will likely meet twice. There's some feedback from the other working groups into these groups that we envision happening. And then all the working groups will come together again on August 22nd for a final meeting. And that's kind of those are the bookends, July 30th and August 22nd for that engagement. And if we go to the next slide, so I encourage you all to listen to the July 30th meeting or a recording of it. It will be really important because it's where our modeler, Jeremy Hargreaves from Evolved Energy Research, will be presenting the modeling approach for the project. And I think that's really important to understand for this group. This is my teaser for that meeting. What we're doing is to model pathways to meet our energy policy objectives by 2050. And that begins with a reference pathway. You have that's the middle bubble here. That's a combination of reasonable assumptions about the future that get us to complying with our energy objectives out to 2050. And we know that nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody's going to get it 100% right. So what we're doing is taking those reasonable assumptions, building them into a reference scenario, and then we have 5 opportunities to test alternatives, to test what happens if something is different. So for example, what if more or less transmission is available? That might be a scenario. Or what if adoption of heat pumps or adoption of electric vehicles is slower than expected? And then when we ask those kinds of questions and build them into a scenario, we get results. We get really interesting results to inform our thinking. You know, what does that do? What do those what if scenarios do to how much electricity we need to build in state and out of state? What does it do to fuel needs, to overall energy costs? So that's really the exercise that we're trying to define through the listening sessions, the working groups, and with you all. And that's my teaser again for next week, where we'll go into much more depth on how this will be done. So where does the advisory group fit in all of this? If we go to the next slide, I forget if this is a transition slide. Yeah, so you can jump to the next one. So the advisory group has a very important role, not just in helping to inform this kind of near-term process that's coming up around the technical analysis, but for the overall project over the next year and a half. This slide represents the scope of the project. The words are words that you already saw on an earlier slide, but I think it's really important to kind of emphasize that we're really glad to have a broad representation that can inform this really monumental task of understanding potential ways forward to ensure that we meet our energy policy objectives, and in a way that accounts for trade-offs, really to dig into how we can maximize benefits and minimize costs, and ensure that no group is disproportionately burdened. And you all are here to help us navigate this process in a thoughtful and informed manner. And I think it's important. I'll just give an example of how this group how we envision this group really helping us throughout the process. Right now, we're at the kind of front end of this engagement with the working groups. And so you're getting a preview into what we'll be talking about. And you can also ask us questions to help us make sure that we've thought through everything, that we're doing a good job. And then we're going to meet in about a month, and we'll be 3/4 of the way through the working groups. And we'll report back to you on how that's going, what we're learning, and you'll have a chance to let us know what you've been hearing and to flag issues that you think we need to be talking about or that you have questions about. And then when we meet a month after that, we will have finished the working group meetings, and we'll be coming to you with where we landed on which scenarios to model and on key assumptions. And that's a really important moment where we're really reporting back to you on where we landed and why, and sort of how what we heard from you, what we heard from the working groups, and what we heard from the listening sessions has informed our thinking. And again, it's an opportunity to have a conversation about that. And so we're both kind of taking on what we hear, we're working with it, and then we're reporting back kind of throughout the project. If we go to the next slide, I just want to sort of tee up the next part of the discussion that Kearns and Wes is going to lead when we talk about the charter. Just to say that we have, I think we're at 30 now representatives of diverse professional and lived experience from across Oregon. So that's our group. We're meeting monthly for the next year and a half, and we really appreciate the time commitment that you all are making to join us in these meetings. And we're really looking to you to provide insights, advice, recommendations throughout the development of the energy strategy on the shaping of the modeling, the policy analysis, the process, all of it. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for your patience. I realize this is a long meeting, and this was kind of a long part of the presentation, but I really appreciate it, and I'm really keen to hear your questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Ida. So we're going to open it up now for questions from the group. Just a couple notes before we do so. One, that as a reminder, these slides will be posted on the ODO website. So for members of the public or for advisory group members, as you want to share those out. I believe they're also were sent to you in your inbox, so you all do have copies hopefully for reference. And then two, as, well, Jeff, I saw a hand raised, so you were modeling maybe, but anyways, in order to get in the queue, there's a raised hand button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll go in that order. We got about 15 minutes for Q&A, so we'll dive in, and then any other questions, you can either put them in the chat or we can capture them after the meeting. Let's go, Jeff, and then Brian.
Well, I was just trying to give Erin a thumbs up or a clap signal for her good presentation, and I realized instead it went to raised hands, so I apologize. That was not intentional. But,
Well,
good.
We'll take the hand up as a clap. We'll honor that. Thanks,
All
Brian.
right.
Brian, and then Joshua.
Well, I guess I do have a question. You know, come on.
Jeff.
Are you encouraging members of this advisory group to serve on the working groups, or a couple of them, or is that duplicative, or what would be your thoughts about that?
I would say that it's not all duplicative. The groups serve a different purpose. So the working groups will really be diving into key assumptions, kind of out to 2050. You know, things like what do we think heat pump adoption is going to be over time, or what will the price of different fuels be over time, and what if questions do we want to model? And this group will get into those issues, but it won't be as in depth. I think it'll be higher level. And so I think that there are quite a few folks in here who are representing organizations who are also participating in working groups. It's not always the same person, but if Jeff, if you're interested in participating in any of the working groups, just let us know, and we're happy to add you.
All right, I did kind of, well, I'm intending to sign up to 2 of them, so I will let you know.
Good. Thank you, Jeff. Let's go, Brian, Joshua, Shannon.
Yeah, so Jeff really asked the same question I was interested in, is what is the engagement level and kind of overlap between the working groups and the advisory groups? And is there an encouragement for the advisory group members to be active participants in the working groups? And I think we kind of already answered the question, so I'm fine.
Yeah, okay, enough information. Thank you. Joshua?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, really great presentation, Edith. Thank you for the rundown. I also have a question about the working groups, so maybe there's a theme here. But I'm wondering, and kind of from a different angle, you mentioned that some of the recommendations from the working groups would be brought to the advisory group. Can you talk a little bit more about what our role would be in incorporating them, if there is a role there?
It's a really good question. So I think that what we'll be doing in the next meeting, and I'm happy for others from Odo to jump in here. I'll say that we're doing a bit of wayfinding as we go, because we don't know exactly how the working group conversations are going to come out. But I would imagine that in the next meeting, we'd be reporting back to you on what we've heard from the working groups, and we'll be really interested in your views on some of those issues. And that'll help us kind of balance out our thinking too, because we'll be less, I think that we'll be bringing it up a level. I think that you all are here because one of the reasons that you're here is that you're able to take kind of a higher level, bigger picture view of all the different pieces and how they fit together. And I think that that's a very valuable level at which to have the conversation. And it's a little different than the kind of deep dives in the working groups. So I think that that's one thing. I think it's kind of reporting back and also hearing back from you on what you think. And then there will be a point where we report back on where we landed from everything that we've heard from you and from others. And I think that there's a part of that is to ensure that we're being really transparent and to give you a chance to ask us questions on why didn't we do it this way? Why did we do it that way? So it's both to inform our thinking and for us to explain where we've landed and why.
And Jessica, were you going to add something?
I was. So everything that Edith said, and just to kind of flag that where this group can play a really valuable role in this process is it would be great if our different groups that are providing advice to us throughout the process landed all in the same spot and had, you know, the same recommendations for us. But we anticipate that there will be times where we don't have consensus, that a working group might have two differing and diverging points of view on something. This is the body that would help us to kind of think about the different perspectives and inform the discussion so that decisions can be made and we can move forward. So just keeping in mind that as part of the working groups, their deep dive and other groups that will be occurring throughout this process may lead to some places where a clear decision or a clear path forward isn't available. And this is the group where we would bring those questions and have you all discuss it.
Great, thank you both. Shannon?
Hi, thanks. My question was about the resolution of the modeling. I'm very pleased to see that we have 5 scenarios that we can explore. In past modeling exercises, it has been completed at an aggregate level for the entire state. And in the utility modeling, it is aggregate for the service area. But what we know is the fact that each of the communities has unique generation profiles, access to different resources, different transmission limitations, and different new loads or existing load profiles. So I guess that's a question I can bring up with Jeremy at that kickoff meeting for the modeling. I'm wondering if you could provide us with a sneak peek of how you're thinking about it.
So Shannon, I didn't hear you super well. Edith, did you catch? I mean, I think it was really around how the modeling can capture some of the uniqueness of the different realities on the ground. But Shannon, if I missed that, or Edith, if you caught it better than I did.
That's correct.
Okay, Edith.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. Thanks for summing it up, Ben. So you're putting your finger on it in a way. We're going to be looking across the entire energy system. And that's a very different exercise from an IRP or another plan for a given utility across their footprint. The model will be informed by what's been done and what's out there. And then we're going to come up with we're not going to come up with a solution for anybody. We will come up with a kind of directional information that helps us understand what the kind of most cost-effective, reliable mix of resources is, taking into account our energy policy objectives and some other things, like we can also take into account to some level land use considerations, for example, but it'll be statewide. And then what you're talking about, I think, comes back in. So we kind of are taking lots of that disaggregated information. We're building a statewide energy sector-wide model around that. Actually, it's a regional model too, but Jeremy will talk about that. And then we're going to take those results and talk about them in the policy discussions. And I think that's where we come back down into that kind of disaggregated view, where we can talk about what's happening where, and we can get a little bit more into the how. Kind of how do we advance our energy policy objectives in rural areas and urban areas, in areas with different industrial loads versus more residential loads. So I think Jeremy will be able to speak more to this. He can answer. I think it's a good question to ask him, because I think that he'll give a really thoughtful answer on what the model can tell us. But I don't think it'll be able to tell us everything. And I think that there will be some things that we can learn from the statewide model. And I think that there's also some things that we can reserve for when we get into the policy discussions. I hope that's a helpful answer.
Good, thank you. I appreciate the question, Shannon. And as you just said, when we'll hold it and bring it back with Jeremy. Jeff.
So I do have a follow-up question on the working groups. I got a couple of inquiries in the last 2 days from people who were interested in learning more about the working groups. I'm not sure why they asked me, but they did. And I gave them the email address that is listed under the working groups for more information, contact, etc. But so I'm wondering what is the process you have going to let people know about these working groups, recruit people? Has that already happened? Is it about to happen? Can anybody in Oregon be a member of the working group? What are the criteria? Just anything about that, because I'm curious too, because they were asking me and they hadn't heard about the working groups except from me, which is I was not intending to be the vehicle to alert them to that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Edith?
But thank you for serving as that vehicle. Yeah, so it's a really good question. There are a couple of ways to be engaged in the working groups. We've sent out invitations to certain folks who we think really
Okay.
want to be there, because they have and we kind of consulted with our sister agencies and with some other folks just to make sure that we're not missing any important perspective in the room when we're talking about transmission and distribution or electricity generation or environmental justice. So we've done a lot of outreach that way. If folks are interested, they should reach out. Jeff, I think your suggestion was really good. We're really happy to hear from folks who are interested in joining a working group. There's a time commitment involved to be in the working group and in that discussion in the room, in the virtual room, a bit like we're doing now with you all. There's a 2-hour kickoff meeting that will bring together all the working groups, and where Jeremy will discuss the model, and then there'll be kind of these breakouts, and then we'll all come together again. Each of those meetings is 2 hours. These meetings will be open to the public. They'll be recorded and will provide an opportunity for written comment. And so I think the question might be for folks who are interested in engaging in the working groups is sort of what level they're interested in engaging. Do they want to kind of sit there in the room and engage in the discussion, or would they rather kind of listen in and see if they have something they want to add? We will be paying attention to anything that we receive in writing. So I hope that's helpful. But again, if somebody's really interested, they should just reach out to us, and we'll be happy to add them.
Sure. Thank you.
Jessica, it looks like you came off mute, and then I want to make sure folks, if they are interested, how should they reach out? But Jessica, jump in.
I just wanted to flag that I really appreciate what Jeff said. We recognize that there are a lot of people out there that we may not have direct relationships with. And we do hope that this advisory group can help facilitate some of those conversations where people might have an interest in something and they don't know us, but they know you, that you could be helpful in connecting us with them and helping to make sure that they can participate in the process. So please encourage people to talk to you, and don't hesitate to let us know where people have an interest, so that we can leverage the great amount of relationships that all of you have, as well as our own.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thanks,
And then
Jessica.
folks
Great.
just use the energy dot, like the same as the public comment email, or is there Edith, do you have a preference?
I think my email is at the end of this presentation too. People can also email me. And I just wanted to add too that we have an email list for the energy strategy where we send out updates, a little bit more detailed updates about what's coming up, about the working groups, about the listening sessions. So folks should also encourage folks to sign up for that email list, and they can sign up through our website. And we're also posting things on the website and trying to do some outreach on social media and things like that. But I realize it's really hard to reach everyone. So I'll second Jessica's note that we really appreciate everybody in this room kind of helping us communicate to a broader audience about the opportunities.
That's great, thank you. So we are right at time for a break, but before, just any other burning questions for today? As I said, this is foundational and tip of the iceberg. So, this will be part of our ongoing learning and journey as we move forward. Any other burning questions for today's purpose? Okay, and then before we go to break, we had some folks that didn't get to introduce themselves earlier. I think Andrew Mulkey, are you in the room now? I saw you.
Hi, I am in the room.
Yeah, if you could do name, role, affiliation, and one hope that you would like to get out of this process.
Yeah, so my name is Andrew Mulkey. I'm a staff attorney at 1000 Friends for Oregon. And I guess my hope for this would be to, I guess as plain as it sounds, just to figure out a good pathway forward to meet our energy goals. So
Well, you're right in line with the vision for the process, Andrew. Thank you. And then Rakesh, I don't think we heard from you, so same question. Welcome.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Sorry that I was late in joining. I had a conflict earlier, but pleasure to be here. My name is Rakesh Aneja. I have the privilege of leading electric mobility or zero emission transportation activities at Daimler Truck North America. And I'm happy to be part of this group. As far as hopes and aspirations are concerned, yeah, this is, as we recognize, the biggest challenge and opportunity we have, the biggest transformation our industries are seeing, both transportation and energy. And I really hope that I can contribute to the conversation and gain something from it as well.
Okay, well, thank you both and welcome. Well, with that, let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 11:02 and move into a deeper conversation about purpose, charter, and the group's roles and responsibilities. So we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Great. Don't leave though. Just turn your screen off when you take your break so we don't have to get you back in. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you got a good stretch break. Some of you might do yoga. Some of you may get in a few extra steps. Some of you may add to your coffee. Hopefully you didn't have too much other work to do. We're really, really grateful for the trying not to multitask. It's hard in this world, so appreciate your efforts. So we're going to get started again, and we will be doing a short presentation. I think Nicole is telling me Nate Hill has come back, but we're having trouble promoting him back into the advisory group table. So I'm only naming names here in case if Nate has stepped away, but if we can help Nicole access you. And if there's anybody else that somehow left and needs to come back, raise your hand so we can find you again. I'm otherwise going to get started unless there's anything anybody's telling me I'm missing. Okay, so Nate says I'm back as a panelist. Thank you. Great job. All right, this is fun. We're here. So we are on now to the charter. And Gilly, go ahead for next slide. Thanks so much. And then what we're going to do at this piece, and we'll leave this slide up for just a second, is to the advisory group members, you should have a version of the charter, and to the audience, it is already published onto the website as a draft. So everybody needs to see it says in big letters, draft advisory group charter. The way we like to do this, I'm going to do a piece of the introduction, and I'm going to hand it over to Edith for some of the substance. So I'll just talk process for a minute. The reason groups have charters, it's like, why? Why do we have to go through this? What's with the paper? What's the purpose? And really, it's a chance to memorialize your agreements with each other for, in essence, how you would like to participate and how you would like to work together as an advisory group. Sometimes I call it a bit of an insurance policy. Some of it may feel like it's overreaching or it's asking too much, but it's really more being proactive to encourage joint problem solving when needed, to encourage these listening to understand why, to really understand each other's core interests. Why are you here? What do you care deeply about? What is it that brought you to this table? And how do you want to engage in a way that not only gets your own interests met, but helps meet the interests of others, such that the outcome is actually better because of it? We sometimes talk about people's options at a table and away from a table. And interestingly, we always have alternatives to sitting at a table and talking with others. You can go through the legislature, you can go through the courts, you can go through the, whatever of public opinion. So the goal here is to be choosing this table because your interest is to really make the outcome better for Odo. Your advice, your recommendations, your insights, your thoughts, your pushbacks, the way you really want to try to influence is going to, we hope, make the outcome better. And that adding to that, we're hoping that you're doing it for yourself and those that you represent, as well as the others that are at this table with you. Again, so that what we're looking for is opportunities to learn from each other, to ask, I wonder why that other representative thinks differently than me. I wonder why they're willing to push in this direction when I think we should go in that direction. I wonder why what they're presuming could actually give me more of what I'm wishing for the people I represent. So I'm going to try to give it a chance to say, could we come up with an outcome that works better? So that kind of robust dialogue, that we call it to suspend your disbelief, that willingness to play in the sandbox together, as well as a willingness to just believe that there could be more than you otherwise realize, not less than, but more than, is where the magic happens. Sometimes we call them elegant solutions. Sometimes we call them the gems. That's what you're all here to listen for. I think the kind of winning as much as possible happens easier in that more unilateral way. This takes a bit of sweat equity. It takes a bit of patience. I sometimes say it gets messier before it gets tidier. This early work of listening hard and asking questions to understand why can make some people impatient. Some will say, I'm already there, stop it already, I got the solution, get on with it already. And others may want to go even slower than what pace we're going. And what I'm going to ask of all of you is patience, and really trying to use this forum as an opportunity for the state of Oregon and assisting Odo in its work to really come up with a long-term strategy. This is legacy work that you're all engaged in here. This provides for generations to come. So that's a bit of our version. When you think about us process geeks, that's what we see as the really awesome thing about having a charter. And so now we're going to roll up our sleeves a bit and just get into, again, tip of the iceberg for each section. We'll give you just a little bit on the what's here and why. And then we are asking the homework of take it with you, read it carefully, think about how well it's doing and using words to represent all of your intent here. Because when you come back to the next meeting, we will have asked you to have provided any feedback you want to give if you think it needs some improvements. Noticing that most of this has a lot of boilerplate language, but if there's some things that you have some heartburn about or you want to help improve on, tell us in advance, because when we get back to the next meeting, we will be heading once around the table to ask for your adoption of this charter, for your commitment to use it as a tool to help you in your work together. Okay, so if you go ahead, Gilly, we're just going to take these slides off and we're going to do a scroll through the draft document. And Edith, I was just going to turn it to you. You know, we've got the introduction, which is the background piece. If you scroll down, Gilly, and then really between the background and the charge and purpose, just sharing from Odo's perspective, why, what's here and why.
Thanks, Deb. So I mean, I think that I'll just bring it up to a slightly higher level to say that, just to lead in, to say that this is really, I agree with everything Deb said. I'm less of a process person. I appreciate the process. So I'm just going to say a few words of my own to say that I really think that what we're trying to do here is to capture a common understanding of the scope of this group and its purpose, how we'll operate, how we talk to each other, and setting some ground rules. I feel like the parent in me is coming out right now about like ground rules of how we talk to each other. So the introduction section that we just flew by, it's really just introduces what the energy strategy is, and you're welcome to scroll through it. I'll note that there's a little bit more, but there is a charter for the energy strategy that we published last fall. It's on our website, and I think that that's this kind of background piece under A1 is essentially that. It's a summary of what's in that broader charter for this project, kind of what it is and where it comes from and why. If we go to the charge and purpose, this is where we really get a little bit into like a little, still kind of relatively high level, but we start to talk about the importance of, and I think this term actually sums up what this group is. It's a statewide leadership group. And so you're representing interests of your organizations, your industries, your communities, and you're all leaders who are able to think of one of the attributes of a leader is to be able to bring a lot of different views kind of to the table and to speak to them and to articulate some of those positions. And then kind of the next paragraph talks about collaboration. This is an open process. You know, we're looking to hear from, you know, your perspectives, your lived experience, your subject matter expertise, and really to provide feedback and insight to Odo. And there are some points on kind of the ultimate objectives of the advisory group that links to kind of what we're trying to accomplish with the energy strategy. And then I've now caught up to where the slide is. Sorry, I'm looking at paper and my screen at the same time. And then the purpose of the advisory group is to really, and you can see here, you know, I think a good paragraph always has to tell you what it's talking about in the first few words. So if I read the first few words of each of these points, you know, provide insights, advice, and recommendations, provide input from other organizations or communities that you hear from and you're involved in, provide a venue for broader public engagement by providing advice to us, Odo, on how best to engage and hear from key interests and constituencies, and review and provide feedback on draft modeling results, draft policy recommendations on the draft report. So as I was saying earlier, there's kind of that early, middle, and end point throughout this process, throughout the technical work, then the policy work, then pulling everything together. And we're really looking to you to inform that process throughout.
Thank you, Edith. So then scrolling along, this next section has to do with roles and responsibilities. And so there's a chunk here first for advisory group members. And I'm going to leave the words for you to read later. But often when we talk about this piece, I think about it as the tables behind the table. So each of you has this job now as an advisory group member. And if you want to think about this, you have this iterative loop, if you will. So every time before a meeting, we'll send you an agenda and we ask you to take that to, if you will, your people and think about the topics. Think about what you want to be bringing to the table to represent for those interests, as well as, again, starting to think about what other advisory group members might bring. And then we have a meeting, and then the robust discussion happens. We get to some next steps. And the second part of your loop is to take that back so that throughout the year and a half to almost 2 years of being together through the end of next year, what we're hoping is we're building this, not just a foundation of information, but a foundation of deep understanding and ultimately some kind of foundation that when you all get to the finish line at the end of next year, you could strive to see how much alignment you might have to support Odo's final report and its product back to the legislature. That if we're all doing our jobs to the best of our ability, this doesn't have to happen, but that there really is this understanding because you've been doing that iterative loop of bringing the interest to the table, having those kinds of discussions, taking it back each time as we continue through the process. I think the other piece is all of these other topics that we talk about already, which is trying to make this the table where you do that kind of work together. You're going to do it between meetings, you're going to do it in other forums, but if some of that good stuff's happening elsewhere, also bring it here. Or if you're troubled or you're frustrated or it's not going well, please don't wait till the end. Bring that here early and let us try to jointly problem solve through those together. So carrying that responsibility for both being prepared, bringing your best here and keeping it going, okay? I think next is for Odo as an agency, as a project team, as the people that are really here to be responsible for the final work product, but to also make it worth your time to show up to each meeting. We always say this process is worth it if each time you come back to the next meeting, we're hanging in there, and that's what we need to be seeing. So, being clear about goals and meeting objectives and agendas, making sure that the technical input is really both credible, understandable, and acceptable, making sure that you each understand not just your responsibilities, but that we help you be prepared so that Odo's doing its work to get you prepared for each meeting, making sure the schedule works for all of you. We really are going to get out a scheduling poll and get the rest of those meetings scheduled within the month so that you know when the meetings will be happening going forward. And keeping the information public, really important to get it on the website, to get it shared openly and in a transparent way. And then just proving that your input matters so that when they're documenting results, that they're really clear about what you told them, why it mattered, and how your input was used. Okay, they hold themselves deeply responsible. You get to hold them responsible. And this is a piece, again, of the value of your showing up and being here. Next up is the facilitation team. And so we've talked already a bit about our neutral role, about helping the process be constructive and productive, about helping you focus on the content, not having to worry about whether the stuff around you is working. We will ask your permission to enforce, if you will, the operating principles or ground rules. And we do that gently because it lets you get to engage with each other. And sometimes we may say, so-and-so, your hand's been up 5 times in a row. Can you hold back a little? We have 6 other people in line. Or so-and-so, we haven't heard from you for a while. What are your thoughts on this topic? So if it's okay, we're hoping you give us permission to do that. Every once in a while, we can get a little, somebody once called me a diplomatic dictator. I'm not sure if that was a compliment, but we may push you a bit as agents of reality on behalf of the process to say, why do you think that? What do you think about what so-and-so said? Or have you ever thought about it this way? Or what are the potential upsides and downsides of what you're offering here? Or even reframing sometimes just to help it be heard differently. So we're hoping, again, we're doing that in the spirit of goodwill. I told you at the beginning, if it's not working, tell us. We're thick-skinned and we'll help it be better. Okay, we have all kinds of logistical things we take care of. You will get meeting summaries that are going to be high level. We hope give you the content needed to support your process. We're going to strive to start and end meetings on time. And again, these are recorded, so people can come back and look. And then to our audience, we are thrilled that you're here. To our listening publics, we are always going to welcome you. You're always welcome to be at all these meetings. We will, as time permits, allow a short amount of time for the public to provide input at these meetings. These are mostly in listening mode for the public and for the audience. And we have all these other ways, I think Edith has said throughout the meeting, you know, both through the listening sessions, through written comment, through interacting more through the website, through other tools, being at the working group meetings to listen in. There's lots of other places. And we want to make sure that your input happens. There are also going to be the webinars. So lots of ways to be able to get information and to provide input. And again, we'll do our best to leave it open here as time permits. Moving along, again, I'm just hitting kind of the top pieces. So desired outcomes matter. And it's a way to kind of think about this upfront. So we have a way to evaluate ourselves at the end. So just really quickly, first and foremost is making sure that your advisory group member input has been meaningfully considered. So I think you're hearing already from Odo, there are numerous touch points along the way. Use them effectively. Use this vehicle to give the feedback. And again, if it's not working, say so, and let's help it really be successful. And afterwards, you can say so. Next is really that it ultimately, your input aligns with the legislative goals and principles of HB 3630. So, you know, there are plenty of things for you to read after the meeting. If you haven't had a chance to delve into it, go back and look. It is the direction that this group is functioning under. So let's help guide through the clarity for those results. The next is that the documentation really provides a fair and accurate record of your efforts. And lastly, in the end, that you say that this process was complete, accurate, fair, and transparent. So even if you don't get everything you want out of it, was it fair? Were you heard? Were you listened to? Was your input considered? And do you think it was accurate? Okay, so that gets us through desired outcomes. I think then scrolling along the membership, I think we've spent a fair amount of time already with the who you are, how you got here, and why you got asked to join. And we'll keep on thanking you for that and appreciate your being here. So this membership criteria comes out of the bill. And so keep going here. We have your names, make sure we spelled them correctly. We got your affiliations right. And then we have a couple more sections I just want to take a moment on. Most importantly, this one called operating guidelines and procedures. Lots of times charters have a section like this, and this is where you get to be aspirational with each other, with Odo, and with your publics. And so we really do want you to look at this. We put proposed in here on purpose, even though the whole thing is a draft, because these seem to be 5 that we thought might resonate for all of you. And what we're going to ask is that you take a look at them after the meeting, kind of take a breath and say, does this reflect well on why we're here? When we have aspirations for our interests, and then we think about us, I always talk about it at the end, you're at a party celebrating your great success. What is it you're celebrating? What did you achieve? How did you get there? And why was it worth your time and effort? Some of these we hope might be the kinds of phrases you would be able to brag about, if you will, about what you all did, why it was worth your time. So take this back, look at the words, see if they resonate. If you'd like to improve on it, we'd love to get your input, okay? And then decision-making. This is not a process where first of all, you can't require consensus anyway, but the highest level value to Odo here is your input, your advice, your recommendations, okay? That is the highest level purpose of this group. This group also has opportunity to seek common ground and to strive for alignment when possible. So if you do find some of that common ground and you get those aha moments or those gems, that also gets documented. And ultimately, you know, Ben and I have done this work for a long time. That's a really powerful message. When a diverse group like this agrees on something, you're given a pretty strong message back to Odo, back to the legislature, back to the governor, and that's for them to consider. You know, may or may not happen. And so it's just something to think about, because ultimately what alignment is saying is, again, we're choosing the results here vis-a-vis having ways to go to court or ways to be in public or other kinds of ways you could kind of quote, get what you want. But because you're seeing this ultimate value and the alignment, again, is powerful. So we're not going to be looking for voting. I often say you only vote on what you want on your pizza. If you're having lunch together, that's it. We're not going to be sending around the table kind of yes, no on things. And again, consensus is not required either. And we're considering all input. Your member feedback will always be documented. And especially if you're heading in a place where for some, there's some alignment, we really want you to be brave. If you can't say yes, what does no mean for you? And again, it's not for voting. It's more around what are the important components that you want represented, because that's the highest level value here. And then I think ultimately that Odo's working really hard to make sure they can track and show you how your input's being considered, how it's incorporated into the energy strategy development, and why or why not if the information wasn't used or included. Okay, so just a little bit more. I'm not going to make you hear the ground rules and operating principles again. I did them at the beginning. I think they're mostly straightforward. If you have any changes or improvements, let us know. And then the last piece is about schedule and deliverables. We are intending to, again, get the rest of the meetings on the calendar. The hope is that folks can make all the meetings. If possible, we'd prefer you not to send alternates. We know sometimes you can't make a meeting, so if you need somebody to sit in, try to give a heads up to let us know. We will still have recordings, we'll still have meeting notes to help you catch up. Please find one of us if you need some extra help. We're all glad to be on deck to help you be ready for the meetings. Right now, we're trying to stick to this half day, 3 hours, maybe a little less. It may sometimes get longer if we have a big bulk of information we need you to consider. We'll give you lots of notice about that. We're also planning that most of these meetings are virtual, but the team is striving to see if we could have a few of them be in person, which would be pretty wonderful, just to get you all some time, some quality time together in person, and we'll give you as much notice to that as possible. Okay, so that walks you through at a really high level what's here in the charter. I just want to pause. Edith, can I turn to you first? Anything you think I left out or maybe wish I would have said differently?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it really well. I just want to emphasize that we're aware that you all may not have had time to look through this in detail, and so it's perfectly fine to feel like you're not quite sure. You need more time to look at this, but I think, Deb, we're moving pretty soon now to questions in case folks have questions that they want to ask on the fly. Is that great? I don't have anything to add to what you just presented. It was a good coverage.
Great. Okay. So Edith said pretty much what I was thinking, which is we know you're seeing this for the first time. We know that you're at a point where you're probably just absorbing it. You haven't had a chance to thoroughly read through it. I'm mostly just going to pause and see if there are either any high-level questions, clarifying questions, thoughts, initial feedback. And if so, just raise a hand if you have it.
Deb, I wanted to jump in real quick.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Questions. Mike Colgrove had a question in the chat that I just wanted to flag for everybody. He wanted to know how much in advance of each meeting would they expect to receive agendas. And our intention is to try to get agendas and meeting materials out a week in advance of the meeting. So I just wanted to flag that for everyone.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Jessica. Yes. So we're striving for a week in advance, and when possible, we'll send materials earlier too. Okay, so Brian and then Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. One quick question. I'm really excited about kind of the breadth of different backgrounds a lot of the members are bringing to the table. And my immediate thought is like, man, there's a lot of individuals in here that have an obvious different perspective on this than I do. In order to really kind of bring my participation and understanding to a higher level, I'd like to reach out to some of these individuals and talk to them kind of outside of this group. But at the same time, I want to make sure that some kind of feedback from the facilitators about making sure that there's not alliances kind of outside the group that are formed, or how do we keep that open and fair? So I'm trying to judge, what is that balance of gaining a better understanding of perspective of people's opinions and views, without burdening the minimal amount of time that we have in this large group setting, and any advice or direction regarding that topic?
Such a great question, Brian. So thank you for asking it. So I have said, like, since the pandemic, one of the things that's been the hardest for people like us is not having you in person for a meeting, because when that normally happens, Brian, is like you take a break and you go get some coffee and a snack, or it's time for lunch and 6 of you kind of grab each other and say, hey, I don't know you, can we have lunch together? Or the meeting ends and you go to happy hour, or you have dinner. Like, there's all this great stuff that creates this kind of, like, the room gets so loud and noisy that you sometimes say, I don't think I'm gonna start the meeting yet. It's going pretty well, you know? And so we're gonna absolutely encourage it. And we know you're all here in good faith. You're doing this to get to know each other. I love the way you said it. You're doing it to better understand each other. Who are you? Why are you here? What's your expertise? What do you bring into the table? So open that up and do it whenever and wherever you can. I sometimes call it the interstitial tissue. It's the stuff that's going to create some glue and help you really kind of get some traction with each other. This piece about the allegiances, I think, you know, we've seen too many reality TV shows, right? There's upsides and downsides to those kinds of things that can happen. And what I want to say is, we're not voting, and you're not going to be here to say, 16 of you said yes and 12 said no, or you 5 always seem to agree with each other. I think you want to be hard on each other. I call it hard on the problems, soft on the people. Okay. If you're doing this because you're getting hard on the problems and you're pushing each other to really understand it and get the best results, great. If you're doing it to win, it's probably the wrong table. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of other places to do that. We can't stop people from how they want to do those things. We're going to keep encouraging you to see the upside. Does that make sense? And push back, Brian. I don't know if that answered your question right.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think your answer focus on the difficult problems, not on the individuals. I think that's key, because you know, I obviously come, and I think all of us come with a little bit of natural bias and focus and background. And, you know, I really expect and want to be challenged on my own thoughts and, you know, my own perspective on the energy complex and the project in the advisory committee, so that I can be a little bit more well-rounded in my focus directions and thoughts in as well. So, no, I definitely appreciate the feedback, and thank you.
Okay, great. And I guess I have just one more thought on this. You know, we facilitators have been doing this work for a long time. There's plenty of places to be strong advocates. So we're not saying don't bring your best and brightest thoughts to this table. We're saying focusing on the problems, not just focusing to be right and winning. And I'm not saying any of you are doing that. I'm just saying it's really interesting at the beginning. You know, we call it this forming, storming, norming, performing for a reason. Like, you kind of have to undo the ways that, you know, these are the same people you may be engaging with here, but just trying to try it differently. That's all. You know, give it some space to let that magic happen. So I'm really glad you opened the door on that. Thanks. All right, Fred.
Yeah, the overall charter seems fine. I do have one suggestion, which is, I think it's valuable to have public comment, or non-advisory group member comments. It's tricky because you don't want people to come in and rant, and you want them, you hope that they'll provide something constructive. I think that that's fine up front, and keep it concise. But my one request is, if possible, when those times arise, don't put it all at the end of the meeting. I mean, you can have time at the end of the meeting, but making people wait to give a comment until the discussion has moved way past that, and everybody is, at the end of the meeting, is rushing for the door to go to their next call or go to lunch or whatever, not very productive. So I just hope that there would be an opportunity, if there is time within the meeting schedule, to allow those kinds of comments. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Fred. And kind of a part 1 and a part 2. We're going to try our best to give, so, sometimes it's even only 10 minutes, but to give some of that opportunity for public input. We think it is good. We can monitor with time. We can try to not have it be as much soapboxing, but really input to the meeting topics is how we try to organize it. If folks could limit their comments to the agenda topics we have today, And then it is really helpful. Let us try to figure out if we could do one like before the break instead of just at the end when folks are gathering up and leaving. So really helpful process tips. Thank you for that. All right. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, comments, feedbacks right now? Hi, Pat, go ahead. You're on mute though, Pat.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Outside of the 3-hour monthly meetings, what kind of time demand do you think this will take?
Just depends how fast you read. No, I think there's some fascinating technical reading you could all spend a lot of time on, and some awesome policy stuff and examples and background. So I think that'll be as you know, as much or as little as you can delve into. I feel like, I don't know, Edith, I'm going to go out on a limb here. It feels like a couple hours between reading agendas, looking through meeting summaries, reading through any reports that might be sent in advance. I think the biggest thing in between meetings is how much availability you have to listen in, like during the working group process. You know, Edith had said this, you know, attending this, listening to this one recorded session would be really helpful. So that could be a couple hours if folks could find time for that. There's some really interesting stuff that can be coming out of the modeling that you're giving it some time to listen to those, to attend just even as an audience to some of the actual working group sessions. And the same thing will happen with the webinars, the public listening sessions, you know, as well as interagency type meetings. So all of those we'll try to summarize to bring them back to give you some tip of the iceberg, but I think it'd be your ability to join up on some of those. But does it seem, Edith, help me? I felt like a couple hours feels like, you know, in advance for things that may come their way.
Yeah, I think you just give a range of between 2 and 16 hours.
Thank you. I was waiting for my bookend on that. Yes.
But no, I think that there might be times where I would say a couple hours on average, but I would say that at a time like now where there's a lot happening, we'll try to flag things that we think are particularly important. Like at the end of our presentation, you'll hear us repeat that this July 30th webinar is really important because it frames up what we're doing. And I think that it's really important to have a baseline understanding. We don't expect everybody to have time to go to working groups. Many of you yourselves or colleagues are participating in working groups, and so I'm sure that there'll be some feedback happening there. That's kind of time that's hard to define. But I think that we're going to work in the meetings, and then Jessica, I see your hands up, so I'll pass it to you after this. But I was just going to say, we're going to work to provide a complete picture in the meeting. But a bit of background would be helpful, if that makes sense. So when we're feeding back on what we've heard, we'll try to be really as complete as possible, but it won't be possible to get all the nuances in there of how people spoke and what came up, you know, stuff like that. So again, between 2 and 16, but realistically, I would say between 2 and 4 hours between meetings, maybe average 2, but when it's really busy, we might ask for you all to pay attention to a little bit of extra stuff like this July 20th workshop. Jessica.
This is in addition to what Edith and Deb just said, but when you might be engaging in a topic or an area that isn't as familiar to you as it might be to others, there are a lot of resources that Odo has to help you if that is of interest. It's not required. I highly recommend looking at our biennial energy reports. Please do not look at the total page number and let it freak you out. They are written in a very short format of tiny articles throughout. And also reach out to us if you need some background, if you need some foundational 101 level material. If we don't have it, we can help you with that. This is something that we think is really important so that people feel like they are empowered with enough knowledge to be able to engage in conversations adequately. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you feel like you want some more information to help get you up to speed. Everybody needs it. Even all of us who work in the energy field learn new things every day. So
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next question. What's the best point of contact at ODOE for this advisory group for feedback, questions, etc.?
I would say to send those to me.
Edith. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
And Jessica, thanks. And there's also a report that we're going to put in the chat. That's really great background reading. And then I just had one more thing, had to add to what the others just said. There are a couple major milestones that I think, you know, you might feel a cadence of the meetings for a while. And then as we head towards one of the major milestones that are heading towards that final report deliverable, that, you know, there might be an uptick in our requesting you to read through more things and to give more feedback. And if you go back when you have more time to look at slide 30, where Edith walked you through the process, you know, when the endpoints of the technical work is coming out and we're heading towards some of those results and looking at the draft model results, asking for your input, asking for the public to engage some more, you know, there's a bit of a milestone, it's a milestone there. You'll see the next sweep happening, as Edith was describing, as we're heading more into the policy development and then recommendation phase, where again, there's this opportunity for some great dialogue and how do you help work through those, improve on those, and what do you think of them? So moving through to that, and then as the draft report comes out, so before it's final, you will be one of the key places that Odo is going to be coming back to say, is this resonating? Is it reflecting? Is it adequately representing where we've gotten through in this process and where we want to take it and how we want to take it to the legislature? So just thinking about those as having some upticks, if you will, in the cycle of any good group work. Okay. So anybody else, anything else on the charter? Anything you're wondering or worrying about, we sometimes ask. Okay, so we have a next step slide for you. This is your first bit of homework on this one, which is, I don't know if it's on a slide, Gilly, but we first just want to thank you for listening and knowing that you just got it and appreciate that you now have a next step. And it's that you take some time, read through it carefully, pull out your red pen if it helps you. And if you have any comments or input or improvements, we would be grateful if you send it to this email address. Again, this is in your slides. This will get it straight through to the project team by Friday, August 2nd. So we're giving you about 2 weeks. We're practicing on this one because these first 2 meetings are closer than a month apart. Normally we'll try to give you longer, but we think that should be enough for the read and any kind of feedback with that special attention to the guiding principles section or anything else that either you want to help us improve or somehow created heartburn, okay? And then just the reminder that's coming back to you at the August 14th meeting, we'll address to try to integrate any changes from the feedback, and then we will be seeking your advisory group adoption. Okay. Anybody else, anything else on this? Okay. Oh, good. Edith just put her email into the chat for advisory group members. Edith, if you get 500 new emails, we may help with some filtering, but we appreciate that you're open and brave on this. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I think I don't see any other hands up. So I think we're going to wrap up here on the charter. Thank you. And we're going to move into next steps. And I don't want to scare you, but we are exactly on time. So well done, everybody, on this. So next slide, please. All right. So Edith, we're going to work on this one together. We've got a couple meetings coming up. I was going to hand it to you to talk about what's going on at these next meetings.
Okay, and apologies, a garbage truck just pulled up. I'm just going to close my window really quickly. The timing is always an issue when you're working from home. So I started to mention earlier that we really think it's important for you to have a preview of what's coming up, because I think that'll shape kind of what to expect and what it might make sense to pay attention to. So we've defined the next 2 meeting dates. We have a meeting on August 14th and another on September 9th. The August 14th date will be, as I said, will be about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the working groups. And so it'll be, and we will have held the listening session. So it'll really be an opportunity to feedback to you what we're hearing. And as Jessica pointed out, we expect to hear some pretty strong differing opinions and views on things. And so we're going to bring those to you and have a discussion about that. And so that's the second point, kind of seeking feedback from you all. And we'll also have the step of reviewing and finalizing the charter. And so any suggestions that we receive from you by email ahead of this meeting, we will have incorporated and be able to talk, incorporated or kind of drafted in with track changes, something that we can track and speak to in the meeting. And then on September 9th, we will have finished the working group meetings and had a last meeting where all the working groups come together and where we kind of report back on the big picture of what's come out of all of those different working groups when we're talking about the scenarios that seem to have kind of floated to the top that we propose modeling. And so we're going to come to you with where we've landed, why, how we've what we've heard has informed our decision. I say our decision, you know, this will kind of be a last stop before we finalize that decision. And when I say that decision, it's really deciding what to feed into the model, what scenarios we'll be modeling, and how we're shaping the technical analysis to learn as much as we can about those different pathways and the trade-offs. And so that'll be the proposal. That's the second bullet for the modeling analysis, draft scenarios, key assumptions. And I think that that'll be a really in-depth conversation and a really interesting one and an important one. And then future meetings, we will need to define. I think that Deb and team might have an idea of how to do that with a scheduling poll. So I think you can expect to see that coming out so that we can just schedule these out for the rest of the project timeline. And I'm also just want to emphasize and kind of provide information so that you all are in the loop, so to speak, on what else is happening between now and these next two meetings. So next week we have two big meetings. We have this working group meeting we mentioned on July 30th, and we have two listening sessions. They'll be the same structure and format. They're just at different times to allow different people with different schedules to participate in them. So, you know, we encourage you to the extent you can to listen to these, particularly the working group meeting. And I showed earlier the schedule for the working group meetings. That's also available on our website. And so, you know, to the extent that you can, or that other colleagues of yours are participating in those, we're very happy for that participation. Deb, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Edith. And then next slide. So we mentioned these next steps, but we just want to confirm them here. And we'll always make a practice at every meeting before we wrap up. We'll always give you the heads up on upcoming meetings, what the proposed agenda topics and any requests we have. So this piece has to do with a couple of the requests. The first is to do your best to watch that July 30th working group meeting to be able to see the kickoff. The link, it will be available to you. If you can't join physically then to observe and listen, it will be recorded so you can find it and make some popcorn and watch it in your free time when you can. It'll really help a lot. And so we're hopeful you can do that. And then the other piece we already mentioned is to review the charter and to get any feedback back to us by the end of next week. And that's in advance of the August 14th meeting. I think I said August 2nd. And so I just want to say a couple other things on next steps, and then I'm gonna hand it back. Oh, Edith, go ahead. Oh.
You might be getting ready to say this, sorry, but I'll jump in now that I'm talking. I just wanted to add that the next two meetings will be virtual, but we've been kicking around this idea of bringing everybody together for an in-person meeting. Summer is hard, early September is hard. And so, it might be October, it might be November, but I'd like to plant the seed with the group here to consider having an in-person meeting. For the reasons that Deb mentioned, if we're all in the room, we can really get to know each other a little bit better. And I think that as much as we've gotten used to it, this virtual world just can be really hard to operate in when it comes to a group this big on a topic this complex. So I'm just planting the seed, and I'll hand it back to you, Deb. But I didn't want to forget to make that point, and I wasn't sure if you were getting ready to make it. So
no, I was not. And I think, Gilly, if you and Nicole, would you kindly add that as an action item? So what we can do, Edith, is as we send out a scheduling poll to try to figure out the cadence of the monthly meetings, why don't we also have a little survey, and we'll see if somewhere in October, November, it might work to have an in-person, and we'll try to check for locations that would make it possible, as well as timeframes. We could just give you guys a little check the box and see what resonates. If it If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but for all the reasons Edith said, it sure would be awesome to try to have an in-person. And we were thinking the same thing, like maybe one at this beginning and one towards the, at the policy recommendation phase. So it might be another nice second opportunity. So yes on that, thank you. And I just had 2 other quick process wrap-ups, and then we'll turn it back to Edith to close. One is that I think I said this, and it's kind of in our operating principles, but we will do our best to start and end on time. And I think that just matters because we know you have a lot of other commitments. So we will be beginning promptly, when the meeting kicks off, if it's 9 o'clock, we'll get ourselves started. And if some of you need to be a few minutes late, we understand. And we'll be doing the same in wrapping up. We're going to work really hard not to go over time. Too many people have back-to-back meetings and don't get a break. And we care that you get a wellness break in there. So we're going to strive to accomplish that. And then we would just ask in response if you could do your best to hold these on your calendar so we win, we get you first, if you will, for all those other commitments. And striving to have you be the person that comes and telling people if they want you somewhere else, saying, no, these guys got me, I have to get to this meeting, and then trying to stay for the whole meeting. And so let us keep our mutual commitment. So thank you on that. And then the last piece is one last time just to say thank you for our audience, to our publics, for our observers today. We know you were listening, we know you're present, and we value that deeply. So much appreciated. And then back to you, Edith, for the close.
Thanks, Deb. I'm really excited. This is a great group. It's just really exciting to be at this point where even if it's in kind of Brady Bunch format, which now ages me, I can see everybody on the screen. It's really really appreciate the expertise in the room, the perspectives in the room, the time that you all are dedicating. I want to add that we would really love to hear as we go along, and I think Deb has said this, but if you at any point think that there's a better way we could have done things or that we could do things in the future, we'd really love to hear that. We have some really expert facilitators here with a lot of tools in their toolbox. And I really want to find a way for us, even though we're meeting at least mostly virtually, for everybody to be heard and feel like you've been heard and to have constructive conversations. And so feel free to reach out anytime if something kind of pops into your head or to speak up in the group. I realize sometimes thoughts come to me after the fact. And so if that's how some of you think some of your brains work, just reach out. I think we want this process to succeed. We want to have a really vigorous discussion here, and we want to come out with an energy strategy that people can stand behind, even if you don't agree with everything in it. We want this process to be fair. We want it to be open. We're really listening. We haven't decided anything. We really are trying to learn and to figure out how to shape this in a way that makes sense. And so I just thought that was important to say. And you all are also really important windows into the networks that you have around the state. And so we really encourage you to be kind of liaisons to your communities and to both carry to them what you've heard and bring back here. What you've heard here and then bring back and hear what you've heard out there. I think that you play a really important role in helping us understand what's being said. Because we don't have the bandwidth to talk to everybody all the time, but we want to really understand what you all are hearing. I'm looking at Jessica and wondering if Jessica wants to add anything to that, but I just want to really say thank you and appreciate your time and looking forward to continuing to meet and work with you all.
I have nothing to add. That was perfect, Edith, and also just want to extend my thanks. Time commitment is real. It's a big commitment. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else, anything else for the good of the order, as we say? So on behalf of Ben and myself, we will close the meeting. We will wish you well. We still say stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We're gonna go into our debrief right now.